It was the dawn of the third age of mankind. 10 years after the Earth-Minbari War, man built a station in neutral space to prevent such things from ever happening again, to promote peace and understanding among the stars. It was a port of call for 100 races and 250,000 people. It was a place where dreams were made and shattered. It was a place where our hopes for the glorious future died, and in so doing became our last, desperate chance for victory. The director, J. Michael Straczynski. And the place is Babylon 5. Yep. Anyways, I'm Sith King.
And I'm Sonic Sons.
We're the Rambling Reviewers.
Today we're looking at Star Wars.
I will fucking kill you. You die first.
No, we're looking at Babylon 5. A great classic that you've known for the longest time, and I finally, thanks to your lending me the DVDs...
you say lending, I more say you are going to watch this or else. And you
finally made it my way through all 5 seasons, 3.5 movies. There's another movie and a half left there, but that's okay. The main story's in this show. There's also a sequel series called Crusade I haven't seen yet, but that only lasted 13 episodes.
Yeah.
Seasons.
Okay, so Babylon 5, what was it? It was a bit of a counterpoint to Star Trek in some ways, and there is some contention over the fact that J. Michael Straczynski was known to have approached CBS, or UPN, the company, the
people in charge of Star Trek?
Yeah, the people who owned Star Trek at the time, and pitched his show. And then Deep Space Nine came out about the same time, using some of the same concepts and even names. Like, for example, Dukat is the name of the Minbari Jesus and the name of the Hitler XP in Deep Space Nine.
Gee.
Yeah.
Mysterious.
Yeah,
well, at least we got 2 great shows out of it.
Yeah, we did. We absolutely did.
This was kind of, what do you call it, like the prototype of prestige television. Like nowadays you have all these fancy shows on Netflix and whatever, and they have like multiple seasons and long continuities.
It was before. I'm not gonna say there was no such thing as that before Babylon 5, but it was really kind of the prototype for that sort of
because like TNG, they were writing it, one season at a time with no idea even how they were going to resolve the season-ending cliffhangers.
Yeah,
it was like, let's just throw a cliffhanger with the whole Locutus of Borg thing, and then I don't know, we'll figure that out in a few months. This was all planned out in advance. 5 years of material.
5 years, 1 season for each year. And the guy was a really good writer. He even wrote in what he called trapdoors, so that as actors needed to drop in and out of the show, due to health reasons, due to wanting out of their contracts, he'd have other characters lined up that could take their place pretty much seamlessly. Yeah,
I was especially impressed how they got, let me get this straight, Sheridan was second. Sinclair was first.
Sinclair was first.
Right. Sinclair is the first captain of Babylon 5, or commander, or whatever, and drops out, and then comes back again in a way you felt like this was planned from the very beginning.
Oh.
And it wasn't. It was like, he had a trapdoor that, made that all work.
Yep. JMS just knows how to do it. But the story behind it is, well, in the beginning, we covered the movie in the beginning a long time ago, but for a recap, essentially, humanity was extending outwards into the stars and started encountering other races. The first they met were the Centauri, basically a bunch of people who looked human, except they had really bad haircuts.
The Centauri have got a big empire, but that's kind of on the outs a little bit.
Yeah, they're kind of a fallen empire.
I mean, they're not like fallen, like ruined, but there's a general sense of, gee, we used to be a little stronger than this. How about we get our glory back?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And a bunch of other races were having problems with a race of basically space Nazi tiger people, space Nazi cat people, known as the Dilgar.
Which you don't even see in the movie.
Oh, no.
I had no idea they were cat people until just now.
Well, I mean, you actually saw one in like the first season.
Oh, really?
J'adore, Deathwalker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but...
I forgot about that.
Yeah, anyways... The Dilgar were kind of on and let's use the gentlest term possible, genocidal rampage throughout space.
Messing with the non-aligned worlds, as I recall.
Yeah.
Which is a convenient shorthand for all the people that aren't big players in the galactic world, but all combined, they're kind of a player.
Yeah, the League of Non-Aligned Worlds kind of works like the League of Nations, and in fact was supposed to be a direct parallel to that, because they don't really help each other. They're not really a major economic bloc, and they basically exist to say to the larger powers, if you try to mess with us, we'll fight back.
Right.
But they didn't really do well. Well, the Earth, despite having super primitive technology, they had really strong super primitive technology.
I mean, we say primitive by the hyperspace faring standards, of course.
I mean,
not Stone Age technology.
One of the things that Babylon 5 does really well for the humans is it makes all the technology look like stuff that we could come up with eventually without throwing in space magic. Like, all of the ships from Earth have big rotating sections to provide artificial gravity.
Or if they don't have those, then the people you see are all strapped down to their seats during the shot.
Now, all the other races are pretty much more advanced than humanity in a lot of ways, which is why on alien ships you see people walking around like it's no big deal, because they do have artificial gravity.
That they haven't bothered to share with us, though they bring that up finally in season 4, I think.
Yeah, well, okay. In like one of the background materials, they explain that developing your own art-grav technology is a sign that you're making it as a really great race. Although, that would also include the Drakh, so... No, okay, that would include the Drakh, who suck, and the Pak'ma'ra, who are corpse eaters.
There are various ways to be considered great.
And the Drazi, who...
At making art grav, at least?
Yeah, okay. Anyways, so despite their primitive nature, their primitive technological levels, humanity managed to reinforce all the League of Non-Aligned Worlds and beat them back. Beat back the Dilgar to their home system, which they didn't know, unfortunately, was... The reason that they were on this genocidal rampage was because they were trying to escape their home world.
There's less genocidal ways to do that, folks.
Because the sun was about to explode.
It's funny that no one noticed this shit, but okay, space physics.
Fun? Okay, now none of this stuff is barely touched upon, but it explains a bit of the backstory of the human race in this universe. Also, in one of the side materials, it is explained that the Earth Alliance did know about the sun about to explode of Omelo. The sun of Omelos was about to explode and did evacuate some of the Dilgar off-world and set up like an independent colony where hopefully they could rebuild and become a peaceful member of the galactic scene.
That's very nice.
But the reason I tell you this story is because it made the Earth Alliance a little arrogant, because we had a bigger navy and bigger, more powerful navy than pretty much anyone that wasn't the Narn, the Centauri, the Minbari, or
Vorlons, or anyone else.
Or the first one races.
Point is, we had a big success under our belt, and we felt a little arrogant, and that shot us in the foot.
Yes, well...
Several feet, really.
See, what happened next was humans decided to start expanding and contacting all the other races to try to get trade contracts and, see what was out there. What, sounds like pretty standard spacefaring stuff. Unfortunately, there were 2 issues. First off, they sent Captain Jankowski, who pretty much everyone involved except for the upper brass said, no, this guy's an idiot, who's way too trigger-happy to be sent on a mission to the Minbari, a.k.a. the oldest of the young races. This is the most advanced alien race out there that isn't, like, a godlike being.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they sent a trigger-happy guy to check out the borders of Minbari space.
Which, by the way, Minbari are isolationists, and that's why we haven't talked to them before.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this was also about the time that prophecies of the Minbari were starting to say that their great enemy, the Shadows, were starting to return. So, as one does, the leader of the Great Council, a man named Dukat, yes, like I said earlier, Dukat was essentially, okay, it's hard to really describe because imagine Jesus if he was also a rock star and a superhero.
I feel like that's actually more Valen, to be honest, right? Like, in terms of historical import.
Well, okay, this is how the current Minbari view Dukat.
Right, yeah.
That's about the way I can explain
he's
about...
He's the leader of their whole race, so he's
the leader of their whole race, but more than that, he crossed boundary lines between the different castes. He was really charismatic and important. That's what I'm trying to get at, is explaining exactly how much of a big deal this is. Because when he was taking the Grey Council on the way to Jahadum, the Shadow Homeworld, they ran into Jankowski's group, and unfortunately, Minbari scanners were so powerful that unfortunately they caused several of the ships to overload in Jankowski's task group.
Jankowski thought, oh god, we're under attack, and opened fire, killing the Minbari Jesus in a lucky shot.
One hell of a horrible coincidence, but history does have those sometimes.
Yeah, it's not helped by the fact that Minbari typically approach new people by having their gun ports open as a way of showing, hey, look, we have our guns open, we're showing everything we have to you.
Right.
Whereas
subterfuge is considered more aggressive than just showing your arms.
Which is a problem because generally when one's gun ports are open, people see that this is essentially for everyone else the equivalent of running into a bank yelling, I have a machine gun! I'd like to open a checking account!
Yeah.
Give me an IRA!
You know, I heard of a situation like this happened in real life once. With they were like infiltrating some other, some third world country someplace. And what the infiltrators didn't realize is that it's normal when your vehicle approaches like a base for the guards at the base to point their guns at you, and then they shout advance, because I guess this is a cool way of saying welcome back to base. So the special forces guys thought they were under attack when actually the guys were saying hello, and then crap happened.
Yeah, well, see, the Minbari kinda sort of lost their shit because the humans accidentally killed the equivalent of Mohammed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when I say lose their shit, I mean they were attempting to wipe out the entire human race.
Now, I will small point on that, or more point actually. There's a scene in the beginning where they say, oh, they seem to be attacking all our military targets and leaving the civilian targets untouched. And they make a parallel to, I guess they're killing off our warrior caste as they see it first, and leaving everyone else. So not actual genocide so much as curb stomping the military, yes?
Well, for now. They did absolutely plan to get rid of the rest of us.
Well, that would be really terrible. Okay.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of politics behind the scenes. Not behind the scenes of the show, but behind the scenes of both of the
political entities in the show.
Yeah, like, for example, I gave this example, but the reason why the Minbari threw themselves so wholeheartedly was not just because Dukat died, but because the military caste had been sitting on their asses for a couple generations and hadn't done crap, and were eager to test their warrior prowess out on a target. Not to mention, they wanted to prove that they didn't need the Rangers, which were an extra caste that wasn't really a caste.
It's a special task group type of thing.
Yeah.
Outside the normal line of command, sort of.
So, this is just all kind of in the background, but you pick up on it when you're watching the show, which I really like, because it's not outright stated. Anyways, humanity got its shit kicked in until, the Battle of the Line, where every ship we had left, up to and including space U-Hauls, were tossed up into orbit to try to halt the Minbari advance. Except
Which is right at Earth at this point, by the way.
Except here's the thing, this isn't one of those cases where the Minbari were losing ships and we're growing to respect them. No, the Minbari had a cloaking field that you could see the ships. You couldn't shoot them because none of your guns would target accurately. So the Minbari lost about, 6 ships total versus the thousands of Earth Alliance vessels.
So it was a curb stomp war.
Yeah. So they got to Earth orbit and they were like, wow, the humans are really defending their homeworld really strongly. No shit!
Yeah.
So they captured a guy, and what a surprise, it happens to be Sinclair, the future commander of Babylon 5.
At this point was just a fighter pilot.
Now, Minbari have an ape shall not kill ape rule, and they used a test to see what kind of soul he had, because souls are actually a thing in this universe. Mm-hmm. Well, turns out that he had a Minbari soul. So the Minbari figure, oh crap, some of our souls are being reborn into human bodies. We can't kill them because of that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: they never explained it to anyone except for the upper levels of EarthGov.
Yeah, for some reason. Yeah. Did even EarthGov even hear about it?
EarthGov did hear about it
because there are parts of the Minbari, upper groups that didn't know it. You got to get into the Grey Council before you'd be told what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't just broadcast the information. And this is going to be a general theme. Someone on TV Tropes said this. They were like, the great strength of Babylon 5 is that its character work and general themes are so good that you can overlook all the stuff that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And there is a number of things that actually don't make sense, which bug me a lot less than it would in another show. But yeah, like, honestly, this is part of the reason why it took me so long to see the show proper, is because I started within the beginning, and I noticed some plot holes that I just got bothered by, and so I made it less of a priority to see the show. But, like, they do this whole thing where the Great Council is split, right, just after the attack, just after Dukat dies. Great Council's got 9 members on it, and it's 4v4. We should either attack or, like, try and communicate. And it comes down to Delenn, who will later be a major character.
And Delenn is his protege.
His protege,
What was
yeah.
Dukat's protege.
Right. And she's, mad with grief, and she says, no, attack them, so we launch the war. Then, like, 5 minutes later, maybe a day later, if I'm recalling this correctly, I don't know, she meets a couple of Vorlons, who are even more powerful and more revered than the Minbari. They're almost like angels. In fact, they're genetically doing this thing where everyone who looks at them sees an angel. And they tell her outright, hey, in order to beat the Shadows, you're supposed to make friends with the humans and not kill them. And then they have her a hologram of Dukat being like, hello, Delenn, it's me, Dukat, from beyond the grave. Not that he knew he was going to die. You totally need to make friends with humans and not kill them. And Delenn's like, oh crap, I just ordered the people to kill humans. And you think she would switch her vote at this point and be like, wait, guys, new council meeting, can we please not kill humans? And it doesn't happen for some reason, and she goes on feeling guilty about it for the whole war. Like, even some of the warrior cast guys are kind of feeling guilty because this is such a curb stomp battle, and nobody's like, hey, did you think maybe we could just end the war? And no, they don't think of that. For some reason, they have to capture a random fire pilot and hope he has a Minbari soul. That doesn't make sense, but overall the story is still good.
Okay, yeah, that's one of the things that
One of
hasn't
the
aged
things.
as well. Like, a couple fan stories I've read have tried to hand-wave this away, like, well, we started doing this, we can't stop without a reason. And they're
There's
like,
a good reason. We were all idiots to have this war in the first place.
okay, yes, but okay. This is all the backstory. I haven't even gotten into the main show
I haven't
yet.
gotten to the
But
show yet.
so 10 years after this, the Earth government, along with the Minbari government, worked together, by which I mean Earth did all the hard work, while the Minbari just threw us some money sometimes, and built a 5-mile-long space station called Babylon 5 in neutral territory between each of the great major powers. The Vorlons, the Minbari, Earth, and the Narn. Wait.
And Centauri.
Centauri. Okay. Sorry, I thought it was 4. Anyways, moving on. So basically that's what Babylon 5 is for. It's for all the regional powers to get together and have a chance to talk.
Basically space UN.
Sort of, yes.
So yeah, we're hoping to keep everyone from killing each other, because we discovered recently that war is a bad thing. Who knew? But various groups are at each other's throats. You got a number of humans who still hate Minbari, and vice versa.
Yeah, and it's kind of justified when they launch a genocidal war for what seems like no reason against you, and nearly succeed.
I could see why people would be upset with all the death and just.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's understandable, but at the same time, it's like, come on, man.
Yeah, a lot of that hinges on the exact intent of genocidal versus, I mean, of course, even just launching attack only against military targets without a reason. But they thought they had a reason, and no one communicates because, well, actually, they didn't have universal translators. So at the beginning, they had a real problem communicating. Yeah. Anywho, so there's other things going on, though, too. The Narn and the Centauri totally hate each other.
Oh, they absolutely hate each other. If you put a Hebrew and a Nazi in the same room, they would hate each other just slightly more than the Centauri and the Narn hate each other for good reason.
Yeah.
See, the Centauri kind of sort of took over the home planet of Narn and enslaved its people. So the Narn are kind of pissed about that, so they eventually drove the Centauri off their world, reverse engineered their tech, and their entire foreign policy goes blah, 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 like make peace with the races. Oh, and fuck the Centauri.
Yeah.
Seriously, about 50% of their GDP goes into the military specifically to kill Centauri.
Yeah, there's even mention that they have like a famine on their world at some point because they spent too much effort defending against Centauri. Which, granted, the Centauri could come and kill you all and would totally love to do so if they got the chance. We'll be discussing that later.
Yeah. So, and this introduces us to the ambassador of the Narn, G'Kar. And G'Kar and his opposite, who we'll get to, Londo Mollari, are just honestly two of the best characters in a lot of fiction I've seen.
This is one of the places where it really shines with those long arcs.
Yeah.
Because they built up stuff to actually be changed and be different and stuff that you couldn't do that on, say, TNG, when you don't know where anything's going, so what was the point of setting too much up in advance?
Yeah, G'Kar, when you first meet him, seems like the usual cackling cartoon Saturday morning villain. He tries to sabotage the Babylon 5 because it gets in the Narn's way of, pounding the ever-loving shit out of the Centauri. He tries to get Commander Sinclair deported because it looks like Sinclair poisoned the Vorlon ambassador.
Oh yeah, there's that whole mistaken thing there.
But then at the same time, he warns Sinclair's girlfriend, do not go to this planet. It would be a very bad idea. You will likely die. But he does it in such a way that it makes it sound like he's going to kill her because he's just a bastard. And in fact, once she leaves, he arranges for a ship, a Narn ship, to follow her. And you think this is going to be like, oh, they're going to try to assassinate her. And we're going to see this awesome thing where she manages to outwit these stupid Narns. Except they don't. And it turns out that the reason why he said not to go there was because a giant spaceship occasionally appears there and turns off any spaceships in orbit over this one specific planet. And G'Kar said, no, get her once she's too stupid to get out of there and pull her back to Babylon 5.
Yeah, so you're like, oh, that's a bit of... He's being merciful, but he also describes his own political advantage in that. Like, at this point, there'd be no point... It wouldn't be helpful to have Sinclair in a more distressed state of mind. So you're like, oh, so you've got, like, self-interested but also altruistic motives. There's more depth than I thought. Mm-hmm. Also, the first thing we see him do, because it's in the first episode, unless you don't count the pilot, is he's covering for the Narn attacking and trying to annex a colony called Ragesh 3.
Which is a colony of the Centauri.
It's called the Centauri. And they do this whole shtick where they, like, kidnap Londo's nephew, who happens to be there, and force him to read a statement like, no, we totally invited them over for tea. Everything is totally kosher.
The colony at Ragesh 3 was failing, so we invited the Narn because the Narn are so super awesome. And their penises are bigger than ours and are way more handsome and sexy. Oh, it makes me... Do I have to read this? Keep reading!
Right, so he's pulling, political shenanigans there, which Londo is justifiably upset about.
And that brings us to Londo. See, Londo, when he starts the series, we first meet him when he's in the casino and having a good time, rolling dice. No one really takes him seriously. And that's the problem with Londo, because he knows his people used to be taken seriously. They used to call the Centauri the Lions of the Galaxy. They would stride across the stars like giants, and everyone feared and respected the might of the houses of the Centauri. But as he puts it, that's not really happening anymore. They've become so insular and self-obsessed that their empire is shrinking. Everyone else is catching up and becoming more successful. Even the humans, who the Centauri were the ones who introduced humanity to FTL travel, and the humans are set to take the place of the Centauri as the rulers of the galaxy. He openly says...
aside from the Minbari and the Vorlons, but yes, they're up and coming, yeah.
Yeah, even in one of Londo's first scenes, he quietly mourns that they've become a tourist attraction. See the Great Centauri Empire, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Earth Standard Time. Mm-hmm. And that's really where his character motivation comes in. He views his position here as a joke, a way that someone is getting rid of him.
He's like stuck in middle management type of a feeling there. Yeah.
At the same time, he also sees what his people could be and wants to be. Yeah. And unfortunately, his motivations and ambitions for them will really not end well for anyone.
Yeah, it's not good when your first motivation is to be powerful enough to conquer people. That's not entirely altruistic, shall we say?
Yeah.
That leads him down a dark path.
Very dark path, in which Now, the human cast make up a good chunk of the people we interact with most on a day-to-day basis. The leader is Commander Sinclair. His first officer is Commander Ivanova. Commander Sinclair is okay as a commander. He comes across as a bit more than a bit wooden, though. Which
He does. He has, I think, a little more natural gravitas than Sheridan does, which is nice when he's talking about important things on Babylon 5. But he has less range. I mean, particularly the romance stuff with Sheridan later on, it's harder to imagine Sinclair pulling that off.
Oh, absolutely. If you want to imagine Sinclair properly, picture if William Adama from Battlestar Galactica still had the spark of life and wasn't beaten down.
Yeah.
And that's about what you'd get. The problem came from outside of the show's control, because Babylon 5 was fucking cursed. See, his actor was actually schizophrenic and had to leave the show because he was suffering horrible hallucinations on the set. And he left at the end of the first season to get medical treatment. J. Michael Straczynski, the director, actually promised to never tell that to anyone until after the actor himself died a couple years ago.
Oh, really? This
Yeah.
is a secret that whole time.
Yep. Actually, the actor said, "Take it to your grave," but the guy, JMS, said, No, I'll take it to your grave." And after that, well, okay, it sounds callous, but they use it
Right,
to
yeah.
help raise attention for mental...
Yeah, no, that is an important subject. I'm glad he got some treatment. Apparently, I mean, I'm hearing all this from you, that he apparently got a little better
Yeah.
after he got some treatments. That's very good.
Yeah. Then there's Michael Garibaldi, played by Jeffrey Doyle, who unfortunately passed away a couple years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of people have passed away from Babylon 5.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
And this was back in the 90s. So.
Including Jakar. Jakar's actor passed away. Let's see. Michael Garibaldi was always fun. Imagine, not quite a Looney Tunes character, but he always tried to keep things light. While still portraying himself as like a kind of a grizzled guy.
He was like, okay, he's a grizzled chief of security guy who's quite comfortable shooting people and throwing folks in lockup and yelling at them and stuff, and also has a giant picture of Daffy Duck right above his bed.
And he openly considers the greatest thing in the universe to be a copy of Duck Dodgers in the 24th and 1/2 century. No, not the cartoon that came out a few years, like a decade or two ago. Like the classic Daffy Duck cartoon.
Oh, they made a new one a couple years ago?
Oh yeah, they had a whole series about him. He had Porky as his sidekick.
Okay, no, classic stuff. Which, from the 24th century, is even more classic. The guy's reaching at this point.
Yep. Yeah, he's always good for great things, and you can always tell when in the show it is by looking at Jeffrey Doyle's hairline, depending on how far it's
Yes.
receded.
Yeah, they did make a joke about that in like season 4, I think. There's some brief reference to and then he tried that weird alien hair stuff, and it just never was the same again.
Then there is Dr. Stephen Franklin. Again, the actor has passed on, but he was a kind of a stoic doctor who had an interesting character arc, who cared so much that he later started abusing stimulants and drugs in order to stay awake long enough to treat everyone. Because, quite frankly, he was so overworked that he didn't see any other way of doing it. That character arc kind of fizzled out later, but I still liked his character.
Yeah, no, especially as things went on. In the beginning, he didn't have quite as much narrative stuff to work with. He was
Also,
a
in the
little more
beginning, he wasn't there.
in the beginning of the show.
Well, it's hard when the pilot is called in the beginning.
In the first season, he didn't
no,
have as many.
that's The Gathering. I'm sorry, never mind. So this was pointless.
In the first season, he didn't have as much narrative material to work with, I thought. So it was a little more like, yes, I'm the doctor, and here's the plot-relevant information about this patient's condition. But then he had, like, stuff to do. He had the stim problem, he had a little romance angle, he got involved in the resistance, we'll get to that later. So that was helpful. Yeah.
Then there is the second in command of the station, Susan Ivanova, a.k.a. the best female character I've ever seen.
Ooh, high praise.
Oh,
But
yeah.
definitely a strong character.
Strong character, don't give no shit. Don't
she's
give
got the-
or take shit.
She's got that Russian sort of determined pessimism thing going on. Like, well, everything sucks, but I'm going to deal with it anyway. You
Yeah.
know?
She is amazing.
Yeah, she had a lot of great lines.
Oh,
So
yes.
sad after she left, and after a while, you're like, oh man, there haven't been any good Ivanova lines lately. And you're like, oh wait, Ivanova's not in the show anymore. Ah.
Yep. As far as I know, she's still alive, so, nice change of pace. No, seriously, the last 3 characters we talked about are all dead in real life.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Anyways, were there other... And then there's the resident telepath, Talia Winters, at first, who is blonde and has a lesbian thing for Ivanova, which is reciprocated.
Yeah.
But because this was the 90s, they kept it on the down low.
Considering, though, the 90s, it was amazingly forward. It doesn't come up until much later. This isn't brought up. In fact, when she first meets Ivanova, Ivanova's got like a huge problem with her. Because this whole backstory about telepaths, and telepaths are generally important. So, most races have telepaths. And most races, I don't really know how they treat them in other places, I guess. But on Earth, anyway, there was this fear that telepaths would, use their power and read people's minds and pry out their secret information and stuff. So they need to be, controlled. So we set up the Psy-Corps, where we draft basically all the telepaths in there, unless you want to go to jail or take drugs that take away your abilities. And then you work for the Psy-Corps and supposedly do good things on behalf of all mankind.
Yeah,
Notice the word supposedly.
The problem is that they dress like Nazis. I am not even fucking kidding. They were all black with black gloves and goose-stepping boots, and they believe that normies are inferior to
Right.
telepaths.
So basically, we accidentally created the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Yeah, but on the plus side, the guy who plays Chekhov in Star Trek. Yeah, he's Bester. He is the main psychopath that we see.
Yeah.
He's evil as all fuck, but,
but
it's
he's an
amazing.
interesting character. So this is an early, I think maybe the first episode even, where you see how much backstory and stuff is layered in. Ivanova explains to Talia, who she's been avoiding all day, that her mother was a telepath and didn't want to join the Corps because all the danger and totalitarianism involved there, didn't want to go to prison, so they would send someone to give her the drugs, an injection every so often, to take away her abilities. Interesting side effect, however.
Yeah, one of those, we didn't kind of put it in the really fine print, maybe didn't mention it at all.
No, this is how you start noticing the Psy-Corps is evil. The long-term exposure to the drugs tends to cause suicide.
Depression, incredible depression. Basically, it makes them feel like they're not there.
Depersonalization, perhaps. Whatever.
Yeah, and eventually, Susan came home one day and found her mom dead at her own hand.
Yeah. So now she kind of hates all telepaths and says to Talia, "Look, I'll try and be professional. I know you personally haven't done anything, but I do not like the Psy-Corps."
Then, aside from that, there's also Delenn, ambassador of the Minbari, but no one knows that she's on the Great Council in the first few seasons because...
Nor do they know her role in the war.
Yeah, which probably would have resulted in her getting lynched. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, with all the anti-Minbari feeling going around, I can see she would be an easy target.
Oh, yes, absolutely. She tries to provide the moral center of the show, showing... a spiritual alien who tries to be wise and stuff, but at the same time you see cracks showing through, and she is not above doing some of the other more primitive human things.
Mm-hmm. And there's Kosh, the master of vague cones.
Oh my god. Kosh is amazing. Kosh is so fucking stupid, and I love him. Kosh is a Vorlon, which means that his main role on the show is to wander around, do some plot-relevant stuff, and occasionally give out the most confusing cryptic bullshit it is conceivable to say. Yeah. One of my favorite lines of his is, "The avalanche has started, and it is too late for the pebbles to vote."
Which at least makes some sense. I really want to nominate those other guys who told Delenn in the beginning, "The truth points to itself." Which apparently is a clue for, put your hand out into this general sky and point at a random ship and it will totally happen to be a guy with a Minbari soul, therefore stopping the war, which we told you to stop earlier, but for some reason you won't stop it until we do this particular thing. That was a big, big jump between the vagueness and the specifics of the thing.
Yeah. Anyways, we also... As the first season goes, that's the most of the major players, and that's not even all of them. There's other side characters and side characters to the side characters.
Oh yeah, we didn't even mention Veer and Lanier.
Yep. Yeah. Anyway,
Which are
Veer is
Ashes.
Veer is the assistant to Londo, and you might recognize him. He's Stephen First. He's done a bunch of voice acting roles. Plus, he was in Animal House. He's also dead now. because of course he fucking is. And then there's Bill Mumy, who plays Lanier, who is Delen's assistant.
And he's got the same sort of religious vibe going on, because he and Delenn are both from the religious caste of the Minbari, so they're always sort of monk-like and speaking softly and that sort of thing.
Yeah. He's usually pretty good for a Hughes, he's usually good as the straight man in a
Yeah, he can do a deadpan snarker thing, just without putting a tone of snark into it. He just talks like this, but totally makes fun of you.
My favorite was that he was trying to... My favorite was, and I can't do it here because just that would take too long to look it up and practice the line, this huge speech he gives about how he's trying desperately to try to tell someone something, but he can't because it's a secret, except that he has to tell someone, but he can't, so he's trying to tell someone else, a third party, about the secret in such a way that it doesn't reveal the secret to the first and second parties.
But we'll make the third party aware enough that he'll go investigate and do other shit that... Yeah, like
which Garibaldi
this rules lawyering stuff that the religious caste has to get into.
Garibaldi then asks if he has like a black belt in legal talk.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so... But across the first season, this is where the strength of the show really comes in. The interconnectedness of the story. Because you start seeing and hearing some things that don't quite add up. Like, there's more reference to extremists that hate aliens coming out of Earth.
Home Guard, they call themselves.
Like the Home Guard. And more extreme actions are being sponsored in the Earth's Senate. And...
Which apparently is unicameral and also controls the entire human race.
Well, they want to.
They do.
Yeah.
Like, Mars wants their independence, but they don't have it yet.
Yeah.
So apparently, like, I don't know, maybe there's some random island that is outside of EarthGov control, but you never mention it.
Yeah.
It's a classic sci-fi thing, you know? The entire species is one government. Just go with it.
Yeah. But then you start to get... Then an episode rolls around where a slimy-looking douchebag starts walking around the station and asking the various representatives of alien governments a single question. What do you want? This is Mr. Morden.
Mr. Morden.
Oh my god, yes. Morden is the harbinger of darkness. If you will, Morden and his associates are like vampires in the way they act, in that they need to be invited in.
Yes, but not
they can...
not for mystical reasons, but simply because they're working behind the scenes for the first few seasons.
Yeah, and when we first see them, they are pants-shittingly terrifying. Because, okay, imagine a centaur, except it's also a spider made out of spikes and nightmares.
Yeah, that's not Mr. Morden, by the way. He's a human. But his bosses are these.
They're called the Shadows.
Dun, dun, dun!
And it's revealed in the same episode where Morden shows up that the Vorlons do not like Mr. Morden for a lot of reasons. We soon learn that the Vorlons aren't much... We eventually learn the Vorlons are not much better. But, yeah...
That's gotta come up in a later season, yeah.
Morden takes the opportunity to basically find out everything he wants to know about everyone on the station. And then he helps Londo by getting him the Seal of the Emperor, which was lost hundreds of years ago.
Wasn't that the eye?
Whatever. Yes, sure. The Eye of the Emperor, which is a piece of ugly jewelry. Well,
and it wasn't lost hundreds of years ago. It was... What was it? Well, maybe what had been lost, but it's delivered to Londo in that episode. And then he's supposed to ensure it gets delivered back to Centauri Prime for the Emperor to help sort of shore up his support. And then that gets lost... en route, wasn't it?
Okay.
And then Mr. Morden swept in and, fixed it all.
What happened was that the guy who... Londo's associate, who was also a Centauri, hired these pirates to attack the ship that it was on and steal it and kidnap him, where he would then be delivered to Centauri Prime. Except that then the pirates are like, hey, we have this shiny rock, we have you, we can just ransom this stuff off and we get a ton more money. Except none of them get the chance to do that because giant nightmare spider shadow battle crab warships appear overhead and destroy everything.
And recover the eye and bring it back to Londo. And he's like, wow, this is great. What a wonderful favor that definitely has no strings attached.
Actually, yeah, that's almost exactly what he says. Except Mr. Morden says, keep us in mind if you ever need a favor of your own. And, oh, by the way, mention if anything weird's going on the rim.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, the rim is an absurdly large section of space, but I presume there's a certain part of the rim, which is, quote, the rim.
Yeah.
Like, the rim is this everywhere. It's a circle. It goes around the whole galaxy.
Well, given how the Babylon 5, the area that Babylon 5 inhabits,
oh, that's right.
The Babylon 5 universe is only like a couple hundred light years across.
Okay, so they're inhabiting a certain, like, a wedge of the galaxy, and the rest of it's
a certain portion of it.
Okay,
yeah.
That makes more sense. Never mind.
Yeah, yeah, but I've looked it up, and the Babylon 5 travel times are really slow compared to other science fiction media, but, it's okay. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Anyways, and this gets expanded upon in further episodes. More Home Guard trying to say... The first season also had a running arc about... There's 24 hours where Sinclair cannot remember what happened in the Battle of the Line, where the Minbari, interrogated him and tortured him. And
which you don't know that watching the show unless you've seen the movie.
Yeah. But since the Minbari sponsored him, some of the Home Guard are really suspicious because they think that the Minbari planted Sinclair to become like a mole for the Minbari.
Right, yeah.
Which isn't super far off. Like, I mean, it's wrong, but it's like...
Well...
The Minbari government did want him there, and they did have their reasons for putting him there and sparing him...
Right, but
it wasn't like...
It wasn't self-interested, like, we want you to betray Earth for our sake type of thing. It was, oh, hi, Minbari soul. We just assume you're more trustworthy than people without Minbari souls.
Right, so there's, like, reason... They're not wrong in that the Minbari had a reason for sparing Sinclair and for the 24-hour gap in his memories. They are wrong in that it was a plot to undermine Earth. Yeah. The season ends with, well... everything going horribly, horribly wrong. Delenn has tried to cross the divide between humans and Minbari.
Well, they don't tell you this at first. Delenn just says very vaguely, "Did you tell my question to Kosh?" And he's like, "Yes," as Linear says. What did he say in response? He said, "Yes." All right then.
It wasn't a yes or no question. What the fuck, Kosh?
She does like some sort of a thing with crystals, and the next we see, she's like in a cocoon, and you have no idea why she's doing this or what the deal is, but apparently it's dangerous, whatever she's doing. Okay.
And at the same time that this is happening, Sinclair has just found out about what happened in those 24 missing hours and goes to question her, only to find Cocoon.
Haha, can't question me now.
Well, there's another problem that's come up. Specifically, there were people running guns and bombs through Babylon 5 that they caught up with. And they used them to assassinate the president of the Earth Alliance. And in the process, one of Garibaldi's, his right-hand man, shot him in the back.
Yeah.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, the problem is that when the next season rolls around, this is when Sinclair's actor had to leave the show, in which they brought in Bruce Boxleitner, motherfuckers. Woohoo! Bruce Boxleitner is awesome. He was Tron.
All right.
He is also amazing in everything he does. He is my favorite commander and one of my favorite characters in Babylon 5. And for good reason. He shows up as the new commander of John Sheridan, because you have to have a JS character in charge of Babylon 5.
J. Michael Straczynski, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's all right.
He shows up and he finds that the station is on fucking fire, basically. No, sorry. If it was on fire, that would be more organized than the way he found it. Let's see. The chief medical officer is currently out of his office because he's running a free clinic down in the squalor-filled section of the space station. Yeah. His chief of security is been shot in the back. They're embroiled in a case of presidential assassination. And to quote Londo Mollari, well, hang on. Last season, Londo lived up to his promise to Mr. Morden and informed Morden that the Narn were going to Jahadum to check things out and see what the fuck was going on.
Which happens to be the capital planet of the Shadows.
So as soon as the Narn show up, Well, the Narn ship gets blown up by the shadows.
Before they can even launch a message. Yeah.
So Jakar decides, hey, I'm an important diplomat. I'll go. So by the time this... To quote Londo at the meeting of the Babylon 5 Council, oh, really? Is that right? Because one of our number has decided to just disappear at the most inconvenient time. Wait, one of our council has disappeared from the face of the station, and the other has chosen the most breathtakingly inconvenient time to explore new career options, like becoming a butterfly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the situation that Sheridan walks into. The fact that he didn't take one look at this shit, turn around, and walk out an airlock is just fucking amazing to me.
By the way, they explain Sinclair's disappearance as he was reassigned to be the ambassador to Minbar. And he's on Minbar now.
Yeah, this actually gets explained in in a series of canon comic books and the canon novel To Dream in the City of I can't remember what it's called, but it's something super poetic and stuff, which actually explains what he's doing in between now and what we see in season 4 or 3, wherever he comes back in. I don't know.
3, I think.
Anyways, so Sheridan is inherited a garbage fire.
Yay! Great way to start.
So Sheridan and Franklin managed to share their life essence using a MacGuffin they got back in the first season with Garibaldi, which he uses to heal.
The point is they heal Garibaldi.
Yeah.
Also, this machine doesn't come up half as often as it logically should, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, partially because it drains life force in order to heal people.
Yeah,
so.
But still, if you have soldiers in a battlefield and one of them is hurt and the other one's not, and you could help them, this would seem like a fair option.
Yeah, that's kind of the moral dilemma there, so.
I'm just telling you, I mean, it's not actually that much worse than medic risks his life by getting on the battlefield to help people. Right? You're statistically giving away at the chance you might get hurt.
Anyways, seasons 2, 3, and 4 kind of blend together a little bit, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean just the storyline continues in such a way that it's hard to tell what happens when.
Do you want me to look it up?
No.
Okay.
But what happens is that Sheridan eventually gets inducted into what's being called the Army of the Light, because the Shadows are on the move again. And the Vorlons present themselves as the good guys. This is wrong. We're just going to summarize a bunch of the plot points here.
Yeah, there's a... Well, okay, well, the next big thing that kind of happens, though, is the Centauri-Narn War, right?
Oh, yeah, that got started back in, I think, season 1. No,
I think they get started in season 2. They fight it through season 3. Season 4 has Shadow War and Earth, President stuff. What's the guy's name again?
Clark.
President Clark stuff. And then 5 is all the other things. Anyway, so yeah, eventually the tensions ramp up between the Centauri and the Narn. Entirely Londo's fault, because even though they already had tensions that weren't his fault, Londo tasks the Shadows to destroy this one Narn outpost that he hates, because there's a border dispute. He thinks it's on the Centauri side of the border. So the Shadows show up and blow the whole thing up. And then Londo gets like more recognition from the Centauri bureaucracy. Like, what's the other guy's name?
Lord Rifa.
Lord Rifa is like, you assembled a very impressive strike force. And he's like, yes, I won't tell you anything about it, but you should totally talk to me the next time you need stuff done, because I'm Londo Malari, and I can do that.
Which eventually leads to him arranging a second strike on the planet of Ragesh, whatever.
Was it Ragesh 3?
Yeah, Ragesh 3.
Okay.
And then had Centauri forces come in behind the Shadows, and the Shadows leave just in time for the Narn to get there and say, oh shit, the Centauri blew up the colony at Ragesh 3.
And to make this very clear, because this is going to come up later, he totally goes into this knowing there will be large civilian casualties, having no particular reason to attack this place. Like, it wasn't, I thought they were going to attack me first, like one of the Earthman Bari thing, right?
This is out of pride.
This is out of pride. And 3, his own emperor was actually trying to make peace with the Narn at that moment. He takes a trip to Babylon 5, and secretly his whole mission here is to make a speech saying, we're sorry for being such jerks for the last several decades, or however long it's been. Centuries. Unfortunately, he has a heart attack. His last words to Londo, his last words alive, and to whisper to Londo that you are all damned for launching this war against the Centauri without the Emperor's permission. Against the Minarn, without the Emperor's permission. Then Londo lies about those last words.
He said, take my people back to the stars.
So what I'm saying here is, Londo starts this whole goddamn war for no good reason. This will come up later. And then there's a great moment there with Jakar. Because, first there's the whole war. The war happens, there are some further, Jakar is a much more aggrieved character now. He really feels for his people.
Yeah, and there's another thing on top of that. Londo still uses the Shadows as his personal strike force to hit entrenched Narn targets. But even with that, even when the Shadows aren't present, which, quite frankly, would be Shadow vessels against most vessels in the Babylon 5 universe that aren't of a similar technological level, it's roughly equivalent to having Romulan warbirds trying to fight the Apollo space program. It's not going to end well.
Nah, that would not work well. Right, so the Centauri,
they're still winning,
they're
even
winning
in conventional warfare.
Really well. Things are going poorly for the Narn. Jakar is begging the human crew of Babylon 5 for help with, or anyone he can find actually, because he begs Delenn too, for help with the civilians that are fleeing from war and stuff. And there's this bit where like Sheridan and Delenn were like, all right, Jakar, we've arranged for like some shipments of food and medical supplies and stuff on the sly because our governments are officially not involved. And he says, well, thank you. And then he goes off by himself and cries.
No. It gets better because they tell him one of the conditions of these shipments is that he can't tell anyone about them. Otherwise, the shipments will have to stop. And he can't even use this to placate anyone who's going, we have allies! And the Narn tend to get really pissed really easily, so you already have a very volatile crew full of Narn.
Yeah.
And he can't use them this as a way to say, please don't kill anyone. Which, they are.
We should clarify on the anyone. So, obviously they're killing Centauri, but there's also like a whole gang of Narn on the station that want to kill like non-military Centauri who happen to be on the station. And he's like trying to stop them from doing that. He wants to retain some standards of decency and stuff.
Which is kind of hard given that the Narn policy towards Centauri was needs a killin', and the primary reason for lost Centauri vessels near Narn space was they were within range of our guns.
Yeah. So interesting moral dynamics in here. Interesting, like you want Sheridan to be like the big hero here and fix everything, and instead he's like hamstringed politically, and he does some things on the sly, but doesn't really fix shit. And so the war continues, and then the Centauri end up winning.
Oh, not just winning. The Centauri, after the last big Narn fleet, their last reserve of ships is obliterated by the Shadows, the Centauri mass their fleet and start using mass drivers on the surface of Narn, which basically means they're throwing asteroids at Narn's surface until all resistance goes bye-bye.
Which, in modern equivalent, is nuking the place, or at least nuking certain sections of it.
Yeah, so and Londo's watching all of this, and he looks horrified that he's...
Yeah, he doesn't immediately, like, change or try to stop it or whatever, but he's just staring at it like, so I'm benefiting from this action, but this is actually a really terrible thing, isn't it?
It gets worse, because Londo in this scene is seeing everything he's ever wanted to happen. The Narn are respected, the Centauri are respected and feared once again, and they've done it by becoming genocidal monsters.
Yeah.
And he knows that no matter what he thinks of this action, he's going to have to go back to Babylon 5 and tell all of them, no, this was justified.
Yeah, and he does make that speech. He shows up, and it just, incredible chutzpah. He's like, the war which started when the Narn declared war on us has come to an end. The war started when you personally made an attack without a declaration of war. And then like, oh yeah, officially it started 2 hours later when they declared war on you in response. But that's exactly what you expect out of a smarmy diplomat, right?
And what happens next is actually one of the best speeches in the entire show. And it's a damn fine speech. I suggest looking it up. Look up Jakar Freedom Speech. Because basically, Londo announces to the Babylon 5 Council that he wants the Narn representative removed completely from the council chambers because the Narn do not have a government anymore. Because they're all under Centauri heel. Yeah. G'Kar gives this big speech about that and then has to leave.
But doesn't get to have to leave Babylon 5 because thankfully our main heroes managed to give him sanctuary so he doesn't have any power, but he can at least live here.
Yep. And he'll basically serve as the an ally who helps keep the Narn in line on board Babylon 5.
Yeah. And also smuggles weapons and shit to the Resistance on the Narn on his own planet, which is called Narn. All the planets are conveniently named in this series.
Yeah.
Which is okay. It's logical, I guess. At least there's some difference between, like, you know, Minbari and Minbar, and then Centauri Prime, as opposed to just calling it Centauri.
Yeah, but... And Londo, after all this is done, sits down and is like, good, we're done with that. Turns on the news. The Centauri have declared war on 12 of their neighbors.
Yeah, they're just gobbling up, like, all the little guys now.
Yeah, see, because Londo just wanted the Narn taken care of and wanted his people restored to greatness. He didn't want them to be continuously attacking everyone within attacking range.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, they're doing.
That you're totally doing.
Yeah, and it gets worse as time goes on, because at the same time, Earth, under President Clark, has turned into a fascist state. In fact, there's political officers there now, on board Babylon 5 now.
She lasts for one episode. Thank goodness they get rid of her.
Yeah, she...
Yeah, this woman is just like 1984, The Smile. You know that book.
You know what the worst part is watching it today? You hear some of the same justifications coming out of some news outlets and stuff.
Oh, sure. These are old tropes that have been going on for centuries.
Yeah, but it's still chilling when you realize what's going on.
At one point, Sheridan's like, so what about, crime on Earth? And she's like, there is no crime. Like, what do you mean? Well, there are some people who disagree with administration policies, and they're quickly taken care of, and there is definitely no crime actually committed. It is all very well in hand. And you're like, no, it's not. You're lying. Why are you just lying with, like, a smile? And, oh, man, ISN. ISN is basically the CNN of this series of Earth.
But then it turns into the Fox News of the series.
It turns into the propaganda. There's a great thing where, like...
Right, like I said.
I know.
It turns into the propaganda machine. So, like I said, Fox News. Ba-dum-bum.
There are...
Or MSNBC. Or if you don't agree with that, MSNBC. Fine.
Point is, they're originally an independent news organization, generally fair. And there's a great scene where they're broadcasting the fact that President Clark's stormtroopers are, like, busting in right the hell now. But we need to, like, send out some important pieces of information before they conquer us. There's a bunch of Earth colonies that have shown signs of rebellion. Some have declared themselves independent. And then they go off the air. And then for, like, the next season, every time you see ISN, it's this smarmy as hell people, like... And now, everything turns out to be the fault of the people on Babylon 5. They're all a bunch of a-holes, and they need to die.
Remember, everyone is great on Earth, and aliens are evil, and
aliens are evil. They pull out, like, a psychologist at one point to testify about how Sheridan is clearly insane in his trying to be nice to aliens, and they're just so smarmy about it, and you're like, oh, I want to punch you people.
Oh, yes. And the best part about that is the Night Watch and Zach Allen.
Oh, yeah, Night Watch.
Who's another person who's currently dead. God damn it. Stop dying, you cowards! Okay, I was quoting Zach Brannigan there. I don't actually consider them cowards.
Of course not.
Zach Allen was kind of like Garibaldi's right-hand man after his previous right-hand man shot him in the back and killed him.
Yeah.
But
Wait, killed him.
Okay, well, not killed him. Whatever.
Garibaldi's been a ghost this whole time.
Yeah, so Zach Allen has sadly been taken in by this group called the Night Watch. The Night Watch is basically a people with black armbands. No, okay, if you have a group and you don't go for armbands, there is nothing good that comes from armbands.
They initially present themselves as this wonderful sort of volunteer organization. We will pay you, actually, to be part of it, and, like, not necessarily do anything. And everyone's like, oh, that sounds cool, I'll sign up.
Yeah, basically just to keep an eye on the station and make sure that everything runs smoothly.
Which is, like, my job anyway, so okay. But then they just slowly start introducing the fascist elements, right? They want you people to report dissenters to the Night Watch. Is there anyone who doesn't like President Clark? And Zach gets involved in this at some point. Like,
oh, and the best part is
Yeah.
when the Night Watch has their first meeting, they say that anything can break the peace, a single action or a thought, and he's looking directly at Talia Winters who volunteered for the meeting.
yeah,
Talia's the telepath.
yeah.
Unfortunately, Talia goes away partway through the show. I don't know why, and is replaced by
Lita.
Alexander, who I liked way less than Talia.
Can we talk about Talia's final episode?
Oh my god, this is horrible.
Ah.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
horrible.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm not talking from a quality
Yeah,
standpoint,
yeah,
because
yeah.
the quality's still good. It's just.
Okay,
Why
so-
would you do that?
So Lita, who we had met actually just in the pilot, and then she disappeared. Lita comes around and says, "Hey, I've got secret information. The Psi Corps has this super secret program where they'll kidnap somebody and put a artificial personality deep in their brain, where like you can't even find it with a deep scan. And if you send the password into their brain, the regular person dies, essentially. The artificial personality wakes up, and that new one is, like, completely loyal to the Psi Corps. So, and someone on the command staff, we think, is a mole, and doesn't even know they're a mole. So we need to go scan, or rather send passwords into every single person on the staff, which they don't fully discuss. You know, we are risking people's lives when we're doing this, right? We should really feel bad about this shit.
Yeah, except that at this point, Lita has been spending time with the Vorlons and getting super upgrades at this point, so she's basically psychic god.
Yeah, I mean, she takes a while to come into her full power. At this episode, she's doing, like, normal telepath stuff. There's, like, a whole, like, long sequence of, like, I'm discovering my full power type of, anyway.
But she's not in as much danger as, like, you and
So she ends up sending the password to everyone they can think of, and everyone's fine, everyone's clean. And then Talia walks by, and she instinctively tries it on Talia, and oh crap, Talia turns evil and tries to murder everybody. And you're like, ah, no. And they end up, I think, just like subduing her, right?
yeah, and then she gets shoved off to Psi Corps, where it's later implied that they dissected her because Talia had, well, her own super upgrades from a rogue telepath.
Yeah,
so
there was
there was
one of those trapdoor things. We had two characters on that similar tracks in case one of them left the show. But part of what makes this episode interesting is they do the lesbian romance angle before she turns evil, obviously, between Talia and Ivanova, and I was like, really impressed and shocked when this came up, because at first, they've become friends when they were initially, she was very cold to Talia, and then it's, oh hey, can I stay? Yeah, I have to find a new place to stay. Something's wrong with my quarters. Oh, you can stay at my place. Then they're like in these like silky, robes or whatever, and you're like, wow, this is kind of sensual. Then they're sleeping in the same bed. Like, Ivanova gets up in the middle of the night, and like Talia's arm is over her, and you're like, wait, seriously? They're going with this? This is cool. I just didn't think they did this in the 90s. And in a later episode, Ivanova actually says, I think I loved Talia. Wow, that's really progressive.
And they kind of killed her.
Which is the other thing I want to bring up, because they could have done the end of Talia better. You have to write her out of the show. Okay, fine. But what they end up doing is she turns evil, and they stop her from killing everybody, and then they just let her go. Which, like, she just tried to commit murder. I'm pretty sure you could bring her up on charges.
Also, doesn't she know, like, everything that's been going on Babylon 5, including the super secret shit that you don't want anyone to know about?
I mean, they did mention, like, oh, it's a good thing we didn't invite her into the secret circle just yet, but she's a telepath, so she could probably know everything anyway, just by spending time near Ivanova and doing a deep scan while Ivanova sleeps, right?
Yeah.
So that's weird. Look, this is how it should have gone, people. JMS in the past, if I could jump in the past. Talia turns evil, tries to kill folks with a gun, and they knock the gun out of her hands, and she runs, right? And she runs into like a lift and sets the thing to go to a certain deck, and they're like calling into security. All right, stop that lift. We need to stop Talia. And then it stops for a second, and then Talia like pulls out a key card and puts in a thing, and it's like Commander Ivanova override. And then Ivanova's like, oh crap, she must have like copied my key card at some point because she was living in my apartment, right? And then she gets down, and they're wondering, she's gonna get off the station. to stop the ships from leaving, and she gets down into like the Star Fury Bay, the fighter things, and she gets in the thing and like pilots the Star Fury out, which Sheridan revealed earlier. He has his own password to like make the doors open to let Star Furies out, so she knows that password because she scanned him, right? And then they're like, but when did she learn to like fly a Star Fury? And then evil Talia could be like, I've been running this calculations in my sleep because like she's been doing stuff in the background, being evil in the back of the brain the whole time. So then she's flying around and trying to make her way to the jump gate while they send all the other Star Furies to try and shoot her down. So she's bobbing and weaving and shit. And she gets on the communique with Ivanova, who tries to talk her down, like, Talia, please stop being evil. I know you're in there, fight. That old trope. And evil Talia is like looking her in the eye across the Skype link and saying, no, you're the Talia you knew is dead and all this. And then like Talia's left hand mysteriously starts flipping switches and stuff, and she doesn't look at it. And so one of the other pilots is like, wait, something's going wrong. She's overloading the engine core or whatever.
Yep.
And then right at the last second, evil Talia looks down at her own hand and goes, no, and like grabs it and struggles with herself.
No, little bunny foo-foo, why are you doing this?
And then the whole ship explodes, right?
Uh-huh.
And then good Talia was in there and sacrificed herself to stop evil Talia, which is a heroic ending for her, and also explains how evil Talia doesn't go on to tell all this information that she presumably knows to the Psychor because she dies 5 minutes after she wakes up. And that would be a better ending for Talia.
It would absolutely be a better ending.
Yeah.
So, moving back to other plots, eventually it's revealed that the Minbari have, they've basically split. Not in a civil war style manner.
They don't just... Yeah, for a while there's tension, and then they do in fact split. They end the Great Council. Isn't that season 3, 4?
I don't even remember. A lot of this stuff just happens...
Okay, we should mention the Rangers becoming more of a thing, because that's the other thing that happens.
The Rangers were established by Valen, basically their version of Jesus. Well, the first
Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, the first Jesus. And the Rangers were meant to scout out and find where the shadows are.
Which, we haven't mentioned this before, totally tried to conquer the universe 1,000 years ago. Or the galaxy 1,000 years ago.
So Valen was like, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to send out the Rangers. But then after 1,000 years of the only people they were ever trained to fight not being there, the rest of the Minbari don't really like them.
Yeah, they get less funding or whatever.
It doesn't help that humans start joining the Rangers so that they can help out and serve as kind of an information network for Sheridan and his company.
Right, because, so Sinclair, who went to Minbar, isn't just the ambassador there. He becomes Ranger 1. I guess the leader of the Rangers. Even though Sheridan also seems like the leader, I assume Sheridan is just the leader of the local task force or something.
Kind of.
And they induct Sheridan as the leader of the Rangers. So the point is, our characters, they're giving our characters more ways to influence the world around them. First is we're just a diplomatic outpost, and we have some security guys. Oh, now we have a separate secret force that EarthGov doesn't know about, the Rangers. Then we have the White Star, the first of many, it turns out.
Yeah.
Which is their own capital ship that Sheridan manages to sneak out. They fly and they do some errand, and they come back again before EarthGov notices he was gone, continuing suspicions that, about the EarthGov becoming more fascist, Nightwatch becoming more fascist, President Clark probably assassinated his predecessor because he was vice president, so that's how he became president.
Eventually, things start to come to a head when EarthGov starts bombing Mars because, protesters. Because that is a
Mars has wanted independence for a hell of a long time, and now seems like as good a time as any.
So Babylon 5 decides to secede from the Earth Alliance in protest.
Yeah.
It also helps them that, we're also trying to do this Shadow War story over here, so, kind of busy. Can't really do the Earth thing. Basically,
they found good ways to keep our characters at the center of the action when, in the initial setup, they wouldn't logically have been allowed to be at the center of things. Like, how could Sheridan be in charge of the war? Wouldn't that be the president? Oh, wait, the president's evil. Okay, there we go, see? Fixed that problem.
Yep. And as a result, we get the Battle of Babylon 5. I mean, there are plenty of fights around Babylon 5, but here's the thing. This time, it's several Earth Alliance ships that have gotten away from Clark's forces and rebelled have taken sanctuary at Babylon 5. Unfortunately, there's forces that are loyal to Clark in the Earth Alliance, and they follow them. And basically, everyone starts getting wiped out until finally, the last of the enemy ships are gone. And then the jump gate opens up, and more Earth Alliance battle cruisers start rolling out.
But then the Minbar cruisers show
Yes.
up. Yeah.
And that leads to a great line. Captain, we've got more jump points forming directly above the station. And out comes several Minbari warships and the White Star, piloted by Delenn.
Yeah.
Minbari ships, this is an Earth Alliance territory, and this area is under Earth Alliance jurisdiction. No, sorry. Delenn goes, this is Ambassador Delenn. Babylon 5 is under our jurisdiction. Withdraw at once. Earth Alliance forces go, negative, Minbari. We have a priority here. Do not make us engage. Delenn goes, why not? Only one human captain has ever survived battle with the Minbari. They're talking about Sheridan. He is behind me. You are in front of me. If you value your lives, be somewhere else. And they leave. They don't even bother talking. They just leave. And it's amazing.
Yeah. But there's also this great politicking earlier. I do like all the politics stuff of this, because it's so easy to write a show where, you know, everything is just solved with guns, and all the problems are how many guns do we have and shit. And I like the cleverness characters have to employ. There's a whole bit where Sheridan, this is a little bit before all this, Sheridan receives an order that, what was it? It was like, some old general sends him this thing, he gets him on the Skype line, and he's like, all right, so the political office has ordered that, you know, all your security forces have to do evil shit on behalf of Earth. And he eventually realizes the guy is phrasing it very precisely, because officially, legally, the political office cannot give such orders. That has to come from the president, who did not technically sign off on this. So we use this as an opportunity for all the people willing to do evil shit. They go off into this one hangar bay, and then he closes the door on them, and he's like, oh, by the way, all that shit you just did was illegal, you're all under arrest. He gets rid of, like, you know, most of the people who would have opposed him. So stuff like that is cool. And yeah, and they eventually do formally break away from Earth, make themselves an independent state, make deals with the Minbar. Then they have to make other deals with the non-aligned world, so the Minbar aren't always guarding us. And, you know, they had to have their brains switched to on to make this all work. I liked that.
Yep. And then it comes to the end of season 3, which is where, well, Sheridan was married before, but she went missing.
She was presumed dead. Like,
She was
very
presumed
much
dead.
assumed dead, because her whole ship blew up.
In fact, she was on the same ship that Morden was on, so his showing up when Sheridan's around is kind of suspicious.
Yeah, Sheridan's this whole thing where he goes kind of crazy, tries to interrogate him, and Garibaldi has to be like, dude, there are laws. You can't just hold him here all day.
Yep.
And he eventually relents.
Yes, he does. Anyways, well, Anna Sheridan shows up again, because turns out she was alive the whole time. Except not really. Sort of.
Well,
Turns out that she and everyone else on the Icarus was captured by the Shadows and was used, well, basically had their minds wiped and cybernetic implants put into them, so they're basically shadow puppets. And she brings Sheridan to Jahadum, where he finds the main capital city of the Shadows and, like, some of their collaborators. So Sheridan does the thing where he, you know, appeals to the better angels of their nature, and he manages to talk it out peacefully. Oh no, wait, no, he does the opposite of that. He decides that this is bullshit from the beginning, and drags along over a gigaton of nuclear weapons with him.
secretly on his ship that even Anna doesn't know about. And he rigs up his communicator to, like, when he hits a button, the ship will nosedive directly onto his own position to nuke everything.
And he does.
And he dies.
There's a reason why his nickname out of universe is John Nukem Sheridan.
Yeah.
And it turns out that he survived because he was protected by the first one, Drawl. Drawl is like... wait, no, who?
Drawl was like that guy who
Drawl
does
was
the
the other
Great
guy,
Machine.
Yeah, we're you notice we're skipping over a whole bunch of stuff, but the first
Yeah.
one, I'm gonna call him Terry.
Okay, I'll go look it up while you say that.
Okay. He reveals that you still have a bunch of shit left to do, and we need to stop the first ones from destroying the galaxy. Because it's my people's job as the first ones, and I'm the last of the first ones. My head hurts. Lorien.
Lorien. There we go.
Anyway, Lorien goes, we have to stop the shadows because they are out of control. They weren't supposed to do this. First ones are not supposed to be fighting among themselves. We're supposed to guide the younger races.
Yeah.
And then it starts getting revealed that, well, everything is horrible. Kosh dies at some point in all of this.
Oh, yeah, Morden assassinates him.
Yeah, Morden assassinates Kosh.
Who gets replaced by another guy, also named Kosh.
Yeah, I've heard this guy called Ulkash.
Ulkash, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and Ulkash is a douchebag.
Yeah. Yeah, Kosh was vague, but this guy's just a jerk.
Yeah, I mean, Kosh had a condescending attitude, but you get the sense that he at least wasn't actively harmful.
Well, yeah, because he eventually is doing, like, these tutoring sessions for Sheridan, teaching him, like, spiritual things, and you're like, okay, so he's a tutor, that's nice.
Yeah, but it turns out that the rest of the Vorlons don't like the younger races because they get in the way of the great debate.
Yeah, well, that'll come up at the end of the Shadow War. What we know for the moment is the Shadows are finally openly on the move and just conquering all the shit they can find. Then the Vorlons get openly on the move and start killing all the Shadows they can find and not really giving a damn about collateral damage.
Like blowing up planets.
Like blowing up planets.
On them.
Like, oh, did you have one ship on there? Okay, we'll blow up your whole planet. Because we just don't care.
Yep, that is what
So
happens.
then the White Star fleet is in the midst of all this. Sheridan in
White
charge.
Stars plus all of the other races that they managed to sign on to this coalition
That's
of
right,
worlds.
yeah, they got a bunch of people helping them.
Including a few rogue Earth ships, just start going in and they start trying to fight both the Shadows and the Vorlons at the same time. Eventually, the Shadows and the Vorlons show up on the bridge of Sheridan's ship and start trying to shame Sheridan and the leadership of the Army of Light to stop this and pick a damn side, because it doesn't... Turns out that both the Shadows and the Vorlons are assholes. The reason they've been asking these two questions over and over again, who are you and what do you want, is because both of those races have lost their way and don't know what they want themselves or who they are.
Right.
They've been trying to decide who is right. The perspective that...
Order and chaos, actually, right?
Yeah, order and chaos. The Vorlons believe order is the way to make everything better, and the Shadows believe chaos is, and they're willing to kill each other over this. But eventually Sheridan shames both of them and saying, you have no idea what the fuck you're doing anymore. All you're doing is making things worse for everyone. We don't need you to guide us anymore. Now get the hell out of our galaxy. And the last part is a quote.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And then they do get the hell out of the galaxy. So that's really cool. I like the idea of a war being won through, like, better understanding of ideology as opposed to just force of arms.
Yeah.
You could have easily made it like, oh, and then the humans found this, like, super duper super weapon that they can use to defeat both sides. Ta-da! But then it became, like, ideological, which was neat. Also, not fully thought through. And this is another one of my, okay, this doesn't quite make sense to think about it, but the show's still good things. And partly it was compressed, because when they got to making season 4, they thought this would be the last season, even though they planned originally for 5 seasons.
They planned for 5 seasons. Then the people who were making the show said, no, we're giving you 4. And they announced this after the 3rd season had ended, so they had to take all of season 5,
Yes.
throw it out the window, and, well, actually try to
They compressed 2 seasons into 1. So when you got to the end of the Shadow War, it was like, that was supposed to be a few more episodes long, wasn't it? You know? So that's part of the problem. And then, you know, the deal is, oh, the Vorlons and Shadows aren't actually trying to kill each other. If the Vorlons can blow up planets, why don't they blow up Zahadum? Aha, it's because they're just having a debate and they want to see who chooses a side. But, like, if they don't want to kill each other, why are they killing each other during the last battle? There's a whole thing where Sheridan tricks them to both being in the same place at the same time. Instead of, like, having a debate or trying to get other people to fight each other, they do, in fact, engage directly. And it was like, but how did... You just said... They made the whole plot point that they don't engage directly, but now they do. But they don't, but they do. But they... Okay. And if they're trying to have a debate and trying to get younger races on their side, I would love to know how they're measuring that. Is there like a galactic poll going on at some point, and they just want to see who has the most points at the end of a certain time frame? Little vague. If the Vorlons stand for order, why have they been standing for vague cones this whole time? That's not the same thing as order. That's just being vague. So a lot of things could make more sense, but still, cool stuff. And by the way, part of the reason Sheridan is able to talk to them at all is because Lorien is there, who's older than even either of them. So he could sort of like say, hey, you should listen to this guy. So they win the Shadow War.
But there's
really
still
cool.
another conflict on the horizon, which I think was a mistake. Personally, I think they should have taken care of the Earth Alliance stuff first and then ended on the Shadow War.
When you say they, you mean the writers or the characters?
Writers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because after this, it turns out that the Earth Alliance, hey, that's still a thing, and they're still trying to kill us. They just got put on hold because we have super compressed
I think the
storytelling.
reason they did that, though, is the whole idea of it being the dawn of the third age of mankind, which Sheridan explains is the third age begins when the first ones leave, and now we are free to like handle our own issues. And it kind of fits to be like, and then we went and handled our own issues, and like turns out we have issues, and we have to do it ourselves now. I grant you the stakes are much lower, though. There are no planet busters with the Earth War.
So what happens next is it turns out that Garibaldi got kidnapped at the end of the last season by Shadows, who were turned over to, and he was turned over to Psychor because the Shadows were backing Clark's presidency.
Right? Yeah, they're all in league with each other.
Yeah. And he was given basically a mind tune-up where his paranoia was turned up to 11. And I actually thought he had some good points. But he basically started seeing Sheridan as a military dictator who wanted to take over the universe.
Yeah, he like slowly. He first he resigns his commission as the head chief of security, and then he is working for that rich guy on Mars doing smuggling stuff. There's moral dilemmas in there. Is Zach going to turn in on Garibaldi? You know, tensions were rising, and he gets more and more convinced that Sheridan's up to no good, and he gets in with these bad guys that are like, hey, you know, we got to help us take down Sheridan because he's going to do bad stuff, which Sheridan has actually been doing good stuff, honestly. The one big flaw in Sheridan's thing that I wish had come up more is if he's trying to overthrow a dictator and restore democracy, he should probably be practicing democracy in his own free state of Babylon 5. I really wanted this to come up when they went to, I'm going to say Epsilon 3, and they convince some of the warships there to turn against Earth and help with the Babylon 5 crew, at least temporarily. But then it's like, okay, well, you actually follow us all the way to Earth and kill a whole bunch of your own men and all this stuff. And Sheridan has to talk to his old mentor, who actually taught him ethics taught the ethics class back at the academy. And especially if the story had more time, I would have loved for this guy to point out, hey, wait a minute, how do I know I'm not deposing one dictator to prop up another? You set up your own free state of Babylon 5, of which you are technically the dictator. No one voted for you and you have infinite power. Like, you haven't done anything abusive with that power, but still. And then I would have said, okay, there's like a what do you call, devolved parliament of Epsilon 3. Like, they have a local government. And they'll say, look, if they vote to make you the commander of this and to make war on Earth, then I'll go ahead with it. And then Sheridan kind of looks uncomfortable, and he's like, oh, is that, you feel a little uncomfortable? Yeah, is that how you feel? Things go slipping out of your control? That's democracy. Deal with it. And he'd be like, okay, fine. And then you have a whole episode where he, like, talks to the parliament, and he has to convince them this is a good idea, and finally they are convinced, and then he has, like, democratic backing, and they would give him a little more of, like, you know, more clear that he's the hero. But it, honestly, it didn't happen because the show didn't have time, I think.
Oh, absolutely. But what happens eventually is that Garibaldi turns in Sheridan to the president.
He kidnaps him and sends him out to be interrogated.
And by interrogated, we mean tortured.
Yeah, torture interrogated.
Yeah, some of the stuff is actually against the Geneva Conventions.
Oh, absolutely. Torture is against the Geneva Conventions.
Yeah, so that's fun.
I mean, it's a well-written episode. The whole episode of him just in the room with the interrogator, and the guy. It was honestly, it's a lot like the "There Are Four Lights" thing when Picard was captured, just messing with his sense of reality type of thing. insisting it's breakfast, but now it's lunchtime. It's this, it's that. It's true, it's false. I don't care. I can mess with you however I want. And Sheridan heroically refusing to tell him anything and trying to keep his sanity in the midst of it all. So that was really cool.
But eventually, Michael Garibaldi gets his head turned back to normal by Bester, who just wanted to see Bester suffer. I mean, he wanted to see Garibaldi suffer. And
Bester, by the way, at this point had completed his plan because the rich dude, what's his name, had his own secret thing going on to send out a super virus to make all the telepaths need him for like they would need continuous injections of this one drug, and basically would put them on a leash, right? If they ever like rebel against the normals, then
which sounds horrible, and then you remember all the horrible things Psychor has been doing. And it becomes a little muddier there.
I was thinking, well, yeah, it was meant to be a little muddy. I was thinking of it more, honestly, from a strategic standpoint, because it's all like, how do we keep the telepaths on a leash? Wait, I'll make sure they need this one drug that only I can provide. And then I'm like, what happens when the telepaths kill you and steal the drug? The drug. So if I were writing it, I would have been, it's a virus that takes away your telepathic abilities permanently, and also has a 10% chance of killing you. So it's kind of a genocide type of thing in there, which makes it morally wrong because we know there are innocent telepaths out there, right? But he thinks the ends justify the means. Anyway, that whole thing gets blown apart by Bester's plan that involves putting Garibaldi in the organization. Then Bester frees Garibaldi. Then Garibaldi is really pissed, and then he has to go convince everyone, no, wait, I'm not evil anymore. I was being mind-controlled. And he manages to do that because Lita, I think, vouches for him. Yeah. Then they go and bust Sheridan out. And then there's the final confrontation at Earth.
One effective thing about Clark is that we never really... We see like a few glimpses of him, but he's not some larger-than-life figure. He's always in the background, but he's not really... You don't see him.
You know him through his reach. You know about how Clark ordered this and Clark ordered that, which works, because honestly, the few times we did see him, he looks really normal.
Which is good.
Which is good, which is realistic and stuff, but it also, if handled poorly, could rob the drama a little, Yeah. You kind of want an M. Bison guy, of course, But okay, if he's going to be also normal, then let us feel the evil from, the distance of all the shit that's happening in his name. And he dismissed the Senate at one point, doesn't care about democracy anymore.
Yep, and then, as soon as the Earth, the fleet from all the other worlds shows up over Earth, he sets the planetary defense stations to fire down and kill everyone, and then kills himself.
Yeah.
But it turns out that we managed to stop that, so that's good.
Yay!
After that, Earth surrenders and basically joins the new Interstellar Alliance, and in exchange we're given gravity manipulation technology.
Which, I'm not sure we get to see them using that, but...
Not...
It takes a while to retrofit the ships.
Also, much of the ships are just designed to be operated in zero-G,
Right. Also, yeah, so the remaining members of the government, all claim, of course, Clark was out of control, and we had every intention of getting rid of him, eventually. And Sharon's like, how about you get rid of him right the frick now, or I just did. And they tell him, for political reasons, we need you to resign. And if you do that, we'll give asylum to all your crewmen mates. So he says, okay, I resign. By the way, there's a new Interstellar Alliance, and they've just elected me president.
So, yeah, I quit being, a commander, so I'm going to be president, bitches.
So that's all cool. And then, because they thought this was the end of the series, they have all this really, ending-style stuff. They have a
series of fake data files... Okay, in-universe data files, where it shows the aftermath of all of this stuff happening.
Thousands and actually millions of years into the future.
Yeah, they show in 500 years there's going to be a new fascist government that wants to take over the Earth, except that a recreation of Garibaldi manages to signal,
the good guys.
The good guys, and they blow it up, and then Earth regresses into the Dark Ages again, and... Rangers have been on planet trying to guide them back into an uplifted state of technology.
Mm-hmm. And our heroes are mythical characters now.
There were religions based around them. And then finally, in the 4 billion years in the future, there's this
random guy, but
Yeah,
the
he's
point
a
of
ranger,
this guy is
but he shows that humanity has become energy beings like the Vorlons and the Shadows have now.
yeah, and Earth is getting consumed by the sun, but that's cool because we are like the new first ones, you know.
Yeah.
We are the ascended race or whatever. So that was really cool. Unfortunately, there's some things that didn't happen, like Londo becoming emperor, which had been prophesized earlier. But then, oh wait, there's a season 5. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, see, the season 5 suffered from a few problems. Like, one, they didn't know what the hell they were supposed to do because they solved all the plot problems. They solved all the big plot threads in the previous season.
They bring up new plot threads, which I will grant are lower stakes, but I still thought it was interesting character work.
Okay, but
yeah.
I'm just... second, JMS did write some notes on what he wanted for season 5. And they were stolen at a convention. Guys.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Guys, seriously, don't be dicks to people who are trying to give you quality entertainment. It's not cool.
Yeah.
So, what happens is we shift the focus back to Babylon 5, and there's a new commander who was Sheridan's ex-wife.
There's a new, and by that we mean
Not
second
Anna.
in command. Because, oh yeah, we didn't even tell about the Ivanova thing at the end of season 4.
Yeah, she got, like, put in a coma or something.
No, she didn't. Well, okay, initially she was. She was hurt and like in a coma, and then Marcus, a ranger we've had around for a couple of years, and has a huge crush on Ivanova, eventually uses that alien device you mentioned from a long time ago to give his life to save Ivanova, which is a very noble thing, but she's very upset about it, and she's upset over the whole thing and eventually decides to like take a year-long cruise on a shakedown mission for some, you know, far reaches of the galaxy thing. So she's not around for the next year. So she's replaced by a new commander. Oh yeah, and then Sheridan's not the commander anymore. So a new commander who is
Sheridan's ex-wife, but not Anna, because Anna, whatever. The one who was taken by the Shadows is currently a floating cloud of vapor because she was next to a crashing spaceship with over a gigaton of nuclear firepower exploding in her face.
Yeah.
Glorious. Anyways, but that doesn't really play much of a part. She's Commander Lockley. That's
Lockley, yeah.
Yeah, so breaking the rule that the commander's name has to be JS.
Oh yeah.
You couldn't be Jennifer Sanders.
Yeah.
Lockley is okay.
Yeah.
Like, she's not bad, but she's
Not as interesting as Ivanova, partly because we don't have enough time to get to know her.
well, and also partially because you can't be as good as Ivanova. Just remember the Babylon 5 mantra. Ivanova is always right. I will listen to Ivanova. If Ivanova is God, and if you ever break a rule on this station, Ivanova will personally rip your lungs out.
Yep, that's one of her lines.
And then she apologizes to God.
Yes.
Yeah, but Lockley is okay. I
They
just
do-
don't have as
yeah.
much of an emotion. She's
Yeah.
like Captain Marvel in Endgame if you hadn't seen Captain Marvel.
Honestly, the Captain Marvel movie itself was kind of just okay.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, kudos and all for female empowerment, but you could have made a more interesting story out of this.
Yeah, like replacing Captain Marvel with Ivanova.
Oh my gosh!
And Earth with Babylon 5. And, you know, the Kree and the Skrulls with Centauri and Narn.
Yeah.
And, in fact, just make it a Babylon 5 movie. Just more Babylon 5. Please, I'm begging you, more Babylon 5!
Yeah. I would actually love to see, like, if they made, because I said Babylon 5 was a prototype of modern prestige television. I would love to see if they made Babylon 5 nowadays and they had, say, the special effects, for instance, consistent good actors. Like, they're good actors in this show, but there are a few episodes where there's, like, a guest actor who sucks. It's generally just in season 1. That one girl who's, like, a telepath and doesn't want to join the Psy Corps.
she's, like, more
And
monotone.
it's just like the spitting image of a bad actress because she's just always talking kind of like this and not really emoting. And there's like good actors floating around her, like, God, start acting, please. And I don't mean to mock her too bad, but like, I'm sorry, you know, as a reviewer, it's what I gotta do. You know, and there's a thing. Sometimes some of the camera shots are at like a lower resolution for some reason. I can't quite explain it, but I'm watching the DVDs and sometimes it switches to the next shot and you're like, wait, everything got blurrier for no reason. I don't know, something about the technology or the encoding or whatever. Yeah. But they don't have that problem nowadays.
Babylon 5 notoriously had a very low budget. In fact,
Yeah.
one of the things they insisted on was theater experience because theater people are used to working with basically the same set over and over again.
Yeah, they did make good use of that.
Heck, the palace that they used to govern Narn was identical to the throne room because they wanted it to look like the throne room of the Emperor.
Oh, yeah,
but in
yeah,
reality,
yeah.
it was just, we don't have the money for another set.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Okay, what happened in season 5 was, Lockley started to take over, other people started to leave, and people started to leave.
Yeah, it's a long, sort of drawn-out process of leaving. Steven gets a new job, which will only start at the end of the year. So we know he will leave, but, it's not immediate.
Then there's...
We skipped Steven's whole stim thing, by the way. He had to go on a walkabout and talk to... I love this whole thing. We had to go, on a walkabout and stay clean of the drugs, and according to his religion, he has to eventually, find himself and meet himself and, achieve some sort of enlightenment. So he does, find himself, as a hallucination, and then his self turns out to be an asshole who just yells at him for being weak. And I'm like... This is not, for me at least, an effective method of self-care. But anyway. Also, Garibaldi has an alcohol problem, which comes up repeatedly and does come up again in Season 5, actually.
Yeah, so the first big story arc in Season 5 is... What is the guy's name?
Byron.
Byron.
The telepath. Yeah.
Byron is so low energy and so smug and... so condescending to non-telepaths that I genuinely was sorry that he didn't die much sooner.
I liked him a lot better than you did. I get that he was flawed and stuff, but he was really trying to do a Gandhi-style thing for a long time there. He was trying to be, we are going to be peaceful, we will not fight, we will talk to them. And he was telling all his fellow telepaths, don't beat up people in the hallway. We need to be righteous about this. And you're like, okay, I respect that he's trying to do something. Some of his political choices were quite absurd.
Yeah, so he just came across to me as a he came across to me as a more pacifistic Magneto.
But
not necessarily terrorist level, but just he wants peace for his people, but looks down on the others. And he just became really... Anyway, a personal enjoyment of that arc.
We should tell you what the arc is that he has a colony of telepaths he sets up on B5. Because, hey, we'd rather not be slave labor for the Psi Corps, which, by the way, has proven itself to be evil in several different ways. So Sheridan's like, okay, you can live in, some extra space we have in down below. And then there's all this politics where, some people hate the telepaths in general, and the telepaths strike back. And then Bester wants to, lay claim to all the telepaths, because officially B5 is still part of Earth space now. It is weird that nobody went for the obvious solutions in this arc.
Shooting Byron?
Well, that's always... Garibaldi tried that, remember? And he was, mind-controlled into not doing it.
Yeah, I know. Biggest cock block of the whole season.
Yeah. But... Okay, he wants to set up a home world for the telepaths, right? Where they can live in peace, and no one will be scared of them because they'll be out of range, right? They can't, and everything will be fine. There's only 200 telepaths in this colony. You don't need a planet. You need an apartment building. There must be a building somewhere on Minbar, let's say, that isn't being used, and we could just put you there, like we did with that one girl who was a terrible actress, right? Just do that 200 times more over... Solve everything, get them out of Earth's territory, before Bester comes up and makes all his legal claims. Which, by the way, they had a thing with Lockley where it turns out Lockley was on the other side of the Earth Civil War.
Yeah.
And she tries to defend that with hey, it's not my job to set policy, it's my job to defend the Constitution. I'm like, yeah, but President Clark broke the Constitution, therefore defending it would involve not obeying Clark.
Yeah,
this is an obvious counter-argument, Lockley.
One of the biggest rules in the military is that you don't obey illegal orders.
Yeah, so... I feel like if
they
they're going to
established that at the Nuremberg trials. I hate to bring up the Nazis again, but, they said you don't have to follow illegal orders. I was only following orders is not an excuse that they accept anymore, as the twitching legs of the hanging corpses of the Nazis proved.
Yes. I would have played it more as she didn't want to kill, fellow friends of the military, and so stayed out of the war, but didn't, fight on either side type of thing. That would make more sense to me. But anyway, okay, apparently she's a rule follower. She will totally follow the exact rules. But then she breaks rules in order to save the telepaths from Bester. And I was like, you just established that she will follow the rules no matter what. And then she, like, lets the folks out of prison when they're supposed to be in prison. Okay, fine. This is one of the things that makes Lockley less interesting than Ivanova, is these contradictions.
Then there's, like, stuff going... It turns out that the current regent of Centauri Prime has the guy who's in the place of the Emperor, because in Season 4... Veer killed the Emperor, which...
Oh, jeez, we skipped Cartagia.
Oh my god, Cartagia is...
See, we should have reviewed this one season at a time, but...
Yeah, but there's just so much stuff.
So Cartagia, became Emperor after that nice pacifistic Emperor died. And he turns out to be the Caligula of the series.
No. He's not Caligula. Caligula appointed his horse to the Council of Rome. Cartagia would not appoint the horse because he's feared that the horse was plotting against him.
Yes. Yeah, his actual factual plan is blow up Centauri Prime and ascend to godhood. Also, I'm friends with the Shadows.
Like, we're not kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, if you want really creepy stuff, he says, well, I've just got done with the torturers because they're torturing G'Kar at this time. Oh, I'm sorry, pain technicians. You've got to be politically correct about this sort of thing, which you laugh about until you remember that enhanced interrogation is a thing.
Yep, that totally is.
Yeah.
So Londo has this whole plot to eventually kill Cartagia, which comes off, and actually Veer ends up being the guy to deliver the final blow. And then, as part of it, he has a deal with G'Kar to make that happen. And as part of his deal, he persuades everyone to leave Narn the hell alone. So Narn is finally free again. And there's a great bit there, too, where, like, G'Kar is freed, and he shows up at the ruins of the, Narn capital or whatever. And people are like, oh, G'Kar, you worked so hard to help us. You got us weapons during the war. You're so great and everything. Do you, be our leader? Could you be, the king of the Narn, essentially? And he goes, no, that's horrible. I want, democracy, which I presume they have. He wants to be one of the many, one of the Kari.
He wasn't protesting being the leader. He was saying, we need to go to... All the Narn were saying, we need to go to war, and you can lead us.
Well,
He's we're not going back to war. We just got out of war, and we got our asses kicked.
Right, but the other aspect of this, he does specifically say, I want to be one of many, and not the sole leader. There was I don't want to be a dictator type of thing. And then when they tell him, he tells this guy no, and the guy's all disappointed, and he's all like, well, what's wrong with you, G'Kar? You don't know what we've been through. How much have you suffered? And G'Kar, turns around, I was tortured, you idiot.
No, it's not just
doesn't
tortured.
Say it out loud.
He wasn't just tortured.
Oh, yeah.
He had his eye plucked out. He had his eye plucked out, and he has to live with the knowledge that all of this pain and suffering was his fault.
It wasn't his fault. It was
Londo's
fault.
He played a big part in it, pushing the Centauri to the point where Londo was
but
really
Londo still has the primary.
Okay, yes,
guilt
but
there.
he has some guilt over
Right.
that.
It's
not. It wasn't like Londo was just like, well, those peaceful Narn are just enjoying picking flowers on their home planet. I guess I'll just nuke them for shits and giggles.
The specific people he nuked that one time weren't up to shit. Just saying.
I'm just saying, there was blame to be shared on both sides.
Anyway, so that'll happen, and Cartagia ended up dying, and the new guys became the regent, and it turns out the regent, something creepy is going on there.
It turns out that in the wake of the Shadows leaving the galaxy, their servants are called the Drakh. And the Drakh costumes suck.
I didn't think it was that bad. It was a costume.
Okay. Like in Crusade in the movie, it spun off of they were okay, but the costume just looked so bad. They deliberately blurred it and slowed it down so that it would look more alien. And it failed utterly.
Okay, wait. You meet the Drakh twice. Maybe the first costume was sucked, and that one was slowed down, and then you meet him again. I thought it was a different species actually. I thought the second guy looked better. Anyway.
Yeah, the later costume looks better. Okay. But they, pretty much everyone in the production studio agreed that they did not know what the fuck they were thinking when they made the first costume.
Okay, yeah.
Anyways, the Drakh have been planting keepers onto select people all over the galaxy, and it basically controls people.
Yeah, it's like you're conscious and you can make your own decisions, but the keeper can override you at any moment. At which point you are watching yourself do and say things you don't want to do, and you have no way of like protesting.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been arranging it for the regent to set things up for the Narn to get, pounded again. Well, not so much again. They won their first war. To get pounded like crazy.
Yeah, not just pounded, but to stock up on weapons and start getting ready for another war. And there's like a whole arc of going to the Drazi homeworld and discovering shadow weapons are being stocked onto Centauri ships and shadow control devices.
Right, so the Centauri, like, someone has been attacking all these random shipping lanes, and no one knows who, because they never leave any survivors. And eventually it turns out to be the Centauri, but not really the Centauri. There's their whole military is split in half, and the actual military is hanging around on Centauri Prime not doing much, and the other half is like these remote-controlled drone ships that are all set up by the Regent and the Drakh and stuff, specifically trying to piss off all the other races, so they will attack the Centauri, because the Drakh work for the Shadows, and the Shadows ruling as just like, hey, let's have everybody kill each other. It's good for revolution or some shit.
Yep, pretty much.
So that happens, and the Centauri end up taking a pounding, and the Regent ends up dying, and Londo ends up finding out about this, but they're like, oh, by the way, we have nukes already on the surface of the planet everywhere, and if you disobey us, we'll kill everyone.
So Londo gets implanted with a Drakh keeper, and that pretty much takes him out of the story for the rest of
the story. Yeah, just before that, he does have a final conversation with Jakar. And this is where we got to talk about the evolution of the relationship between Londo and Jakar. Because initially, they hate each other, but it's kind of buddy-buddy. It's not super personal, right? It's like, my government hates your government, sort of, but it's okay. Then, it turns into full war. When that first happens, Jakar goes... Like, just before it happens, actually, Jakar has heard that the Emperor is all nice and pacifistic, and he buys Londo a drink, and he's like, there's hope for your species after all. And then an hour later, like, oh shit, I just discovered you totally killed all our civilians on that one planet, and we're launching a war, and he goes nuts, and he, like, wants to assassinate Londo, and, like, Zack has to stop him from doing it, right? And then there's a great thing where Veer, like, tries to say sorry to Jakar when they end up in an elevator together. And Jakar, like, cuts his own hand and blood starts coming down. Every drop he just says, dead. And how can you apologize to them? And he's like, I can't. Then I cannot forgive. And it was very dark and cool. And then, the war continues, and he gets captured, and he gets tortured. He ends up having to make a deal with Malari to free his own people.
No. Before that, he got thrown into prison for he tried to end the war by taking this drug that would make you turn psychic.
Right.
And he tried to attack Londo, and he does, but he has a religious revelation, which is implied to be Kosh intervening and saying, dude, stop this.
Right, but part of it, though, is because of the psychicness, he knows what Londo has done now. He knows that he launched the war and personally and all that stuff.
Yeah, so Jakar is stuck into prison for 2 months, and he undergoes this religious revelation, and it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, he turns to like a prophet in the later seasons.
But not like but a prophet in the sense of like bringing the message to the people, not like seeing.
Yeah, not like a mystical.
Granted, there are actual prophets in this universe, but
that.
And it turns out in the 5th season that Jakar becomes a religious icon against his will because he wrote down all of these notes on his musings of the universe and like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in prison for a long time, blah blah blah. Well, see, some of the Narn found those notes, and they published them among their closest friends. And they published them amongst their closest friends. Long story short, there's about 50,000 copies of this book now. And he's basically being worshipped as a god.
Yeah, people show up at his doorstep all the time.
So eventually he leaves.
So that happens, but I want to talk about him and Londo, though, specifically.
Yeah.
Because then he has to make a deal with Londo, then they have independent nations, then it's... Londo comes to him one day and says, hey... If we both sign a statement that President Clark is horrible, then that'll have a lot of weight in the galactic, opinions because the Narn Centauri never agree on anything. And Jakar basically throws him out of his quarters, but then eventually relents and says, "Okay, I'll sign it, but on a different page. I still hate you, but I do want to help out the humans." So this is evolving of their relationship. Then he eventually becomes Londo's bodyguard. Which all the Centauri are like offended at, but
Oh, there's a great line, how can you like a Centauri stares at Jakar because he's Lando's bodyguard now, and the Centauri just wrinkles his nose because he hates the Narn. Ugh, how can you stand being around this thing? And Jakar just responds, I know, it's a burden, but it's one I have to shoulder.
So, that's fun. In the beginning of season 5, there's, just before the bodyguard thing starts up, there's an episode called The Very Long Night of Londo Mollari.
Oh, yeah.
Which is,
That's a
Londo has a heart attack, and he goes through these, like, mystic visions type of thing, and faces his sin. This is supposed to be, Londo's going to have a redemption arc. And I felt this could have been handled a lot better, actually. First off, in that episode, they list 2 things he has done wrong. Only 2 things. The first being that he said nothing when Jakar was being tortured, and the second being that he said nothing when they used mass drivers against the Narn homeworld. Okay, as to point number 1, he had to say nothing during the torture, because if he'd said something, he would have failed in his plot to kill Cartagia, save his people, and incidentally free Narn. So, like, understandable silence in that circumstance. Second, he did actually say something, very briefly, about the horridness of mass drivers, and he kind of objected to it, not very strongly, but he did say something. What I miss, because this is what I was bringing up earlier, they didn't attend to his greatest sin, launching the war in the first place for his own political gain, killing civilians. That's the worst thing he's ever done.
Working with Mr. Morden.
At least at the beginning, he didn't know Mr. Morden was evil. And he could be like, maybe he doesn't know, I don't know. But he knew there would be millions of civilian casualties on that world that he personally ordered Mr. Morden to attack. That should have been in his thing. And I would have liked to see at the end, when he finally says, I'm sorry, and there are good moments in this episode, by the way. I love how, like, in his vision, he has to turn around and face Jakar, who's staring at him. That was a great moment. But at the end, when
to be fair, that's a common occurrence for him. Jakar just standing creepily behind him, staring at him to make him uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Look, the Narn may have reformed slightly, but screwing with the Centauri is still their national pastime.
But when he says sorry at the end, and Jakar is there at his bedside and kind of gives a grim nod or something, I would have liked for Jakar to say, you know, if you wish to purge yourself of your sins, Mollari, this is only the first step. And then in subsequent episodes, especially because you had extra time, have Londo really try and make amends. Have him spend a large punch of his personal fortune rebuilding Narn homes and bringing medicine to the sick and food to the hungry and stuff. Kind of like the Abrahamo Lincoln thing, which we totally skipped.
Oh my god, that was
which
an
was
amazing
so fun.
thing. Okay, the episode is about how Vir got an arranged marriage, and his new bride-to-be came to Babylon 5, and she's so impressed by him, and it turns out that she's a mass-murdering psychopath.
Yeah!
Who's been killing Narn for fun, and she's been really attracted to him since he's killed about 2,000 Narn every week. And everyone is horrified at this, only for Vir to reveal, yeah, that's about that. It says I did that. But funny story, I didn't actually do that. I've been smuggling Narn from the Narn homeworld under the name of Abrahamo Lincoln.
Which is really great.
And everyone is pissed, like the traditionalists are pissed because you're not killing Narn.
Yeah. By the way, Londo's pissed about it when he finds it. He's like, oh, Vir, you really disappointed me saving Narn. And like, damn it, Londo, that's another sin of yours you have to make up for now. Like, you're just continuously a bigot and totally cool with people getting murdered and not cool at all with them getting saved. Also, yeah, there's a scene in there because Londo never tells the bride-to-be about Vir never tells the bride-to-be about his leanings. So she kidnaps a Narn and brings him into Vir's quarters, and he's like tied up, and she hands him a knife. Like, would you like to kill this one? Like, this is like a wedding gift type of thing for her, right? And
lady, it's called a walk. They're way easier to use than a murder. Besides, once you murder the guy, you gotta dispose of the body, and the stains in the carpet will last just fucking forever.
The
Not
scene,
that I know anything about that.
The scene cuts away, by the way. I assume Vir made some excuse and got the girl out of the room and then freed the Narn. That doesn't happen on screen. I was disappointed at this. And I have a freaking dark fan fiction in my mind where he is holding the knife and looking at this innocent Narn and looks over to the girl who is a Nazi serial killer, I remind you. Like, both a Nazi and a serial killer. And, you know, he said, he kind of looks down at the Narn and says, this is really difficult, but I know what I have to do. And then he stabs the girl. And, like, is really sad about it. And she's all shocked. And, like, her body goes against the wall towards the ground. He's like, I'm so sorry, but this is the only way. I had to save these poor people. And she dies. And he frees the Narn and tells him, please remember, there are some Centauri who are not like that. And it could only ever be a fanfic because I don't know if you would actually kill somebody, but that's the girl deserved to die so much.
Oh my!
They went over the top and letting you know, like, this girl is so evil. It's not because it could have been like, oh, she thinks, you know, from propaganda that the Narn are being treated fairly and doesn't realize that the re-education camps are actually murder camps, right?
Nope, she was
she was personally involved. Damn! I wanted her to come back at some point so she could die. And she never shows up again.
Yeah.
Ah.
And then there's my favorite episode ever, Passing Through Gethsemane.
Oh, yeah.
This explored the idea of death of personality. Because we're the future, we don't have the death penalty anymore, except for capital crimes of treason.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, what we do is death of personality, where we have a person who has committed horrible crimes, gets mind wiped, and then programmed with a new personality that wants to help the community.
Yeah. It's really creepy. It's like, you can see it's helpful and good and also creepy.
Yeah, it comes from like other fictions and stuff, but I'm actually sort of okay with the idea. I mean, it's creepy as all hell.
I understand why you're okay with it, and it also is basically, if you're living in a world where such things are possible, then like, geez, we have seen that abused, like Talia herself gets abused.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know?
But what happens is that earlier in the season, the Babylon 5 had accepted a religious order of monks onto the station, and they're like, okay, why should we accept a religious order of monks? Oh, we're all supercomputer hackers, by the way. He's like, oh,
okay.
I guess we're doing this then.
Yeah.
Well, one of them was Brother Edward, and Brother Edward had always wanted to join the church. And if you remember what I just said about
death of personality
and how they're programmed to want to help the community, you probably already know where this is going.
Yeah.
Brother Edward was, in fact, a former serial killer who got mind wiped. Unfortunately, there was a fire in the building, and before he could be assigned a new personality or
a new
area to
job
help
or something.
Yeah, he kind of had to escape because fire.
Yeah.
And even people who don't have memories know fire bad.
Yeah, that's
so
pretty much joined into the DNA.
So he joined the church. Except here's the thing, the people who were supposed to secure the records, kind of sucked at their jobs, because the victims of Charles Dexter Ward, I think, or...
Yeah, probably.
Anyways, the victims of the serial killer tracked down Brother Edward, and they decided to kill him because they wanted revenge. And they find him and do that. It's pretty...
And he lets them do that.
Yeah, because he mentioned the story of the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus was waiting for the Roman soldiers to come find him with his two disciples, and Jesus prayed that the cup would spare him. Or...
Yeah, it was, Father, if I may be spared from this cup, let it be so, but otherwise let your will be done. And God apparently was like, nope, sorry, you need to die. So he accepted it. The point is, he had the courage enough to accept his mission and to accept death if that was what was best.
Which is what Brother Edward was talking about. He was like, if I was in Jesus' position, would I stay knowing that this was God's plan? Or would I run? And Brother Edward does not run.
Yeah, they literally crucify him, by the way.
Yeah. And Brother Edward dies at the hands of the ringleader of one of the mob.
And then the ringleader
gets mind
and becomes a member of that same religious order. And then Sheridan has to deal with his distaste for this guy, but Okay, I
release-
guess forgiveness is what we were just talking about 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's easy to do forgiveness in abstract, but when you can see the guy right there,
Yeah. That's interesting.
it's just a really good
Moral
episode.
concepts in there.
Let's see.
So what else happens in season 5?
Well, at the Garibaldi leaves, goes back to Mars, and finds the super rich guy with the anti-telepath murder virus. Well, he got deadified earlier.
He got dead in season 4.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
But he goes back, and the super rich guy's wife was an old flame of his. So he goes back and gets together with her.
Right.
But before that, he becomes like the chief of intelligence of the Interstellar Alliance, and he starts drinking again.
Which at one point gets people's lives lost.
Yeah, it causes the bombardment of Narn. I mean, Centauri.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so he leaves. Eventually, everyone just starts leaving.
Yeah, which makes sense at the end of the series.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't mention Sheridan and Delenn got married. That was totally a big thing. And they had a very cute romance.
Oh, and then they kind of shot Lanier in the foot.
Yeah, what was with this? Okay, so right at the end of things...
Close to the end of things, Lanier decides that he wants to join the Rangers. Because...
Okay, because Lanier has a crush on Delenn, right?
Yeah,
A one-way crush.
He's in love with Delenn, but she's married to Sheridan and absolutely loves him.
Right.
So he decides to join the Rangers. Except that... And he's okay at it, except that Sheridan shows up at one point and there's an accident... and air starts getting pumped out of Sheridan's compartment. So Lanier leaves him to die, but like a minute later, he's like, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. But by the time he gets back, Sheridan's already been rescued. So Lanier runs for his fucking life.
Yeah, this made no sense for me. Like, Lanier has always been the guy who will do what is just and right and honorable, and specifically will do right by Delenn, and is entirely willing to give up his life for her. And... he knows, surely, that if Sheridan dies, Delenn will be very sad. And first off, doesn't want an innocent man to die.
Also,
Secondly,
it's
doesn't
the
want
wrong thing to do.
Right. So first off, the obvious wrong thing to do, letting the guy die, just any guy who's innocent. Second, doesn't want to hurt Delenn because he loves her, and the death of her husband would have very much hurt her. Third, by the way, there was a second guy in that compartment, another guy who's not Sheridan, who was also gonna die, right? No, I like yelled at the TV when this happened. Like, no, Lanier would not do this. I know it's supposed to be, canonically, an out of character moment for him that he regrets a moment later. He wouldn't even be tempted by this. He would not. He would totally break the glass and save Sheridan's life.
Yeah, he's almost too good in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it didn't...
In fact, that was one of the jokes that they made when he was paired up with Londo earlier on in the series, that Lanier was way too pure and good of a person, and that was what was so funny about pairing him up with Londo.
Yeah.
And I don't mean romantically pairing, just
like... No, they like, Londo was trying to make friends with new people and get more influence and stuff. Almost serves Lanier alcohol, and his... Oh, this doesn't have alcohol. Oh, good, because alcohol can actually make Minbari go... somewhat psychotic and murderous. Oh, alcohol was that? Never mind.
Yeah, it's like, oh, nope.
Yeah, these silly things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Lanier just got thrown under a bus. That was awesome.
That was, weird and sad. But, yeah, so Sheridan goes, the new Alliance headquarters are on Minbar. I guess they thought that was better than building another space station. And we jump to 20 years in the future. So we get to see how everyone turns out. Garibaldi's still rich, running his company and stuff. Franklin had his great career. Garibaldi's got a kid, by the way, so that's cool. Veer does become emperor.
Yep.
Londo's
dead. And it turns out that... what we forgot to mention was that, remember how we didn't mention how Sheridan survived when he kamikazed a half-kilometer warship directly into the enemy capital and then detonated a gigaton of nuclear firepower?
On himself.
Yeah. Remember how I never mentioned that he survived that? He actually didn't.
Yeah, he
Sorta.
officially died, but Lorien can breathe on the embers of life.
And he gets exactly 20 years of life after that happens. And then Lorien takes his soul away to heaven or whatever. I don't know.
I mean, they didn't tell you in advance, but yeah, it's you have 20 years left. And they did an interesting thing of him in his last days, enjoying the sunrise on Minbar for the first time, actually. I guess he sleeps late. Saying goodbye to the land, sending messages to all his friends, say goodbye to them. There's a bit where they toast the friends that aren't here, Marcus and other people. It was in
Other non-Marcus people.
I don't remember what else they mentioned. Because I remember them not mentioning Sinclair, and I was like, oh, Jesus, we forgot.
Oh my God, we forgot that.
Okay, so this happened also.
Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay, fine. You want to go to the ending first? All right.
Yeah, and one of the places he visits in his last days is Babylon 5, except Babylon 5 is empty. And the reason is that because there are new shipping lanes and new forms of FTL transit now, Babylon 5 is basically a giant cylinder that rotates in space. And since we all have artificial gravity, that's not really practical anymore. We can just make normal space stations. So now it's just
a relic.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, there's no good reason to demolish it, but they mentioned, it's a hazard of navigation. Not how FTL works in this universe, but okay.
Yeah, unless, you're saying that you've been using it to store hyperspace beacons, and it's there's 80 beacons right there.
But yeah, Sheridan says goodbye to the old place.
And it blows up. I started crying when I saw this.
I cried some at the ending.
I watched Old Yeller without tearing up. Babylon 5 should not have been blown up.
From a storytelling perspective, it works so well, though.
It does.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
logically, it doesn't. Yeah.
No.
It does fulfill. No. Do you remember Ivanova's prophecy from earlier, though?
Yeah. No boom today. Boom tomorrow.
There's always a boom eventually, and there was. You were right, Ivanova.
Oh no. So the reason why we kind of forgot to mention this, and it's kind of a really big detail, but remember how we said Sinclair left the show? He came back.
Yeah, he comes back and he's like, hey, I'm up with the Rangers and we've got a special mission.
We're going to time travel!
Yeah, you remember how they built the first 3 Babylons that all got blown up by terrorists?
There's a reason it's Babylon 5. Yeah. The first 3 got blown up by terrorists. The 4th one was operational for 24 hours and then it vanished without a trace. Because, and you're not going to believe this, it was stolen by time travelers.
Yay!
So what happened was that they...
back in the first Shadow War, 1,000 years ago, things were pretty grim when they lost their main base. And then a new base appeared out of nowhere.
When the Minbari were fighting the Shadows alongside the Vorlons, they lost their main base due to Shadow bullshit. And they found a new base appear suddenly out of nowhere, and it turned out that that was Babylon 4.
Yeah, and it turned out, and the guy who made that happen was Valen, who turns out to be Sinclair, actually, who undergoes a thing to make himself look like a Minbari just before he arrives.
Thus fulfilling the prophecy, a Minbari not born of Minbar.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the whole thing has a big time loop. Well, it turns out that he shows up in season 3 or 4, goes to Babylon 4 with, the main cast, and has to steal Babylon 4.
And they have to make sure they do it right, otherwise they'll get an alternate timeline where everybody dies.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyways...
And Zathras is there.
Oh my god, Zathras is an amazing character because he's an insane space hobo.
Yeah.
And I love him.
He's fun. He's fun.
Wait, no. Okay, and he has 9 brothers, all named Zathras, and they are all motor mouths who don't shut up. And everyone is shocked when, Zathras is still around.
And they always have, these odd things to say. Zathras have a painful life. They'll probably have painful death. But at least there's symmetry. You're okay.
Time. No. Cannot run out of time. Time is finite. Time is infinite. You are finite. Zathras is finite. This is wrong tool. Never use this.
Yeah. He's somewhat mystical, but also just odd.
But it's more of an insane mysticality. Insane practical mysticality. like eventually Ivanova finds out that there's a whole family of Zathras on the planet that Babylon 5 orbits, and she's like, well, Zathras, you survived? No, Zathras has always survived. No, hang on, you were with us on Babylon 4. No, Zathras has always been here.
Yeah.
But you are Zathras. Yes, I am Zathras. You are Zathras. Yes. And you claim we've never met before. Yes. But I met Zathras on Babylon 4. Yes.
Yeah.
Then who did I meet? Oh, that was Zathras. No, see, here is how it's different. I am Zathras. You met Zathras. He was always the quiet one of the family. So you're all named Zathras. Oh yes, all me and my 8 brothers. And Zathras.
Yeah, so fun stuff. Also, just, this is before we had the internet, so you could meme this, but when Sinclair first walks in and sees Zathras, actually in season 1, before they do the rest of the time loop, Zathras looks up at him, kind of gets up, and goes, yeah, you are not the one. And I just want them to replace that with, like, Neo, right?
Yes.
We didn't have the internet yet, so... well.
Oh, my God. Just... Oh... Babylon 5 is great.
So yeah,
We
the
just-
whole
let's-
P4 thing out. So I want to know who was supposed to be Valen in the alternate version where Sinclair doesn't leave the show at the end of season 1.
The best way I've heard it is that it's actually not a stable time loop, and that there would still be a Babylon 4 that would appear because it's from an alternate reality, because it's already happened. So basically,
So
we're not
there's some other
not so
guy-
much doing time travel as much as paying it forward to another world.
Okay, but in that version, when we pay it forward to some other world, is there a guy in charge of the station who says, "Hi, I'm Valen" at the end? Or is it just like an empty station? And they're like, "Oh, thanks, station."
I don't even know anymore. Time travel sucks.
Yeah, it's complicated, as Avengers Endgame showed us.
Oh, boy.
So that happened. Stole a time... not actually stole a time machine. Time traveled a thing that wasn't even meant to do that.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah, and then in doing that, he also comes upon the day of Londo's death and all this complex stuff that alludes to Londo eventually getting that keeper on him, that apparently he can make it quiet by drinking a lot, which leads to another one of my "why don't you just do this" type of moments. Oh, you've discovered that drinking makes a thing fall asleep? Drink a bunch of alcohol and then tell people, "Holy God, there's a thing on my shoulder, someone call a surgeon." Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Or just
Save your people, Londo!
Or just drink medical grade alcohol until you fall down.
Or just, like, resign the emperorcy, during the period while it's asleep. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, you guys?
Okay, maybe it wasn't the best explained, but it's still a really good universe, and it's rife for exploration of concepts and ideas.
Yeah. So then, Sheridan in his last moments is off at the place where they won the Shadow War, and Lorien shows up, and he sort of vaguely alludes to, like, now we're taking you out beyond the galaxies, or taking his soul to heaven type of thing, or whatever. Also, Sheridan's son, Daniel, is fated to become mind-controlled by a keeper! And they just leave that there for you. Like, nope, no further stories. We're not going to find out what happens there. Also, there's going to be a thing with Lita trying to overthrow the Psychor. But I think the idea was they wanted to be like, yeah, the story never really ends, That was part of the idea of that's all.
There were some novels about that, but unfortunately I haven't read them. And because they were published around the time the show was popular, and it's roughly 20 years later, you can see why they're not exactly easy to find.
Yeah. And then they made movies. There's
They made a couple
prequel
movies.
movie. There's the mid-quel movie with Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool. There's a couple others I haven't fully seen yet. There's Crusade that lasted only a little bit.
And then there's another thing that I've been trying to track down, but it's really hard. Legends of the Ring. Well, okay, there was like a 2-part special that was meant to introduce people to Babylon 5 again, and that didn't really pan out, but it involved 2 stories. One, Lockley dealing with a demon in a in Babylon 5, and the other was a technomage telling Sheridan that the son of the nephew of Cartagia is going to be a real bad dude when he grows up, so you should kill him right now.
Jeez.
Or he's going to bomb Earth to dust.
Sorry, was this like a book or a show? Or...
This was a special.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll show you the SF Debris review of it
Okay.
like later. Because I can't track it down. And then there was The Legends of the Rangers, which was intended to be a pilot for a new Rangers show, and for some reason had people operating the guns by floating in a VR environment and punching and kicking. Because that is clearly the best way to do things.
That's so weird.
And that is literally all I know about Legends of the Rangers, because it did not get off the ground.
Yeah, nobody liked the VR suits. Sorry.
Anyways.
So, yeah, Babylon 5, an epic tale, definitely made use of that pre-planning thing. You know, plotting out this so there could be a non-Centauri war, for instance, plotting out this whole change between Londo and Jakar, where they eventually are friends right at the end, at least just before Londo gets mind-controlled. And then Jakar helps him out by killing him later on. That's how he eventually dies. Plotting out, you know, the Night Watch and stuff, so eventually you can have the whole fascist government thing and have full-on rebellion, and the Great Machine was set up to help explain our time travel shenanigans when that happens, and it's a big epic thing. TV Tropes claims that this is often like black and gray morality, and like, no, this is actually, our main characters are all like paragons with the occasional addiction problem.
Yeah.
Londo even gets a redemption arc, and is only evil at the end because he's been mind-controlled into it. Arc could have been handled. Jakar becomes a freaking prophet and spreads the message of love as far as he can. And apparently he's going to have a thing with Lita. They're highly hinting at the end there.
Yeah, I don't want to see that.
Yeah! Especially considering the way that all started. Creepy overtones, let's just say.
Oh my, yes.
But, yeah. Big, epic show.
This is absolutely my favorite show I've ever seen, ever.
Wow.
You can take all the other stuff. I would sacrifice every episode of almost all the shows I've seen so far just for one more season of Babylon 5.
I mean, they might bring it back someday.
They might.
They might do. I mean, I know they claimed there was never another, but frick, we'll just screw it and call it Babylon 6. New shit's going on in the galaxy, you know?
Oh my god, I would love that.
Yeah, right? With proper special effects. Because this is, you know, early CGI stuff. It did what it needed to do, but you could tell.
Anyways, I think that's 2 hours and 15 minutes of us ranting about how much we love Babylon 5.
Yeah,
so
great show. If you didn't figure that out already.
Please go see it. It's amazing. Anyways, I'm Sith King.
I'm Sonic Sons.
We're signing off.